America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And don't hear myself. What's that?
So far away now.
Well, we have that issue. I think it's actually working on the stream. Unfortunately, we'll get the speaker working in a minute. Welcome to the second regular meeting of the month of May 2023 for the Village Board of Trustees and Ballston Spa. We are going to start here by opening up our public hearing with respect to proposed local law number 2 of 2023, the sidewalk code changes. And a couple things. When we do open up for public comments, we will be stopping at 7:20 temporarily to make sure our guests from the school are able to get out of here at a reasonable time. And so we'll have that as kind of a break for comments that go over time in that respect. Just generally wanted to review what the intentions of the code changes were and are, and if anybody up here has anything else they want to add to it briefly, I invite you to do so, but we do want to jump into public comments here pretty early on. More or less, one of the main features was to take things out of the code to be able to make adjustments a lot more easily for things such as specs for sidewalks and curbs as they change and ADA rules change down the line, to change specs, and to also allow us to have a little bit more fluidity with what we give in terms of reimbursement to incentivize the replacement, repair, installation of sidewalks. And so there will be a two-step process with anything like this. Number one, passing the code. Number two, putting out a fee schedule and specs, et cetera. And there's a gap of time between approval by this board and when it actually becomes law that will enable us to write those things up. Carl, if you want to briefly just go over what the process of how a bill becomes a law in that respect is, and we'll try to get the audio back up as well.
As long as I don't have to sing Conjunction Junction. See, you got it. There you go. Just a bill. Yep. So the way the public hearing will work is that we'll hear comments from the public. The trustees have the law in front of them. You folks have it, or you have the ability to have it online. And I don't know if there's copies here or not. We'll just chat about it, and then ultimately the board, after the public comment is completed, the board will discuss it amongst themselves. In the event that there's no substantive changes, then what the board can do is finalize the seeker process tonight, and then make a motion for adoption of the law. Once that's done, we send it down to Albany. Albany then, the Department of State, they file the law. We then get a letter back saying the law is filed as of this date. That usually happens within 20 to 30 days. Until you get the notice from the Department of State, the law is not effective. So one of the reasons that the mayor asked me to talk about this was because even if the board adopted the law tonight and we sent it to Albany tomorrow, you're not going to be able to fix or change the, I think your audio went again, change the fee schedule until we get the letter back from DOS saying it's been approved. So it won't go into effect until we get that letter. So you're looking at, end of June, probably, if they pass it tonight, end of June for it to be into effect. And then they can enter into their discussion with respect to the fees. Does that work?
So I think we have a little short in our power cable for the speaker, but again, the audio is being heard over the internet on Zoom, so we will still be using these, even though we're usually loud enough for you to hear us anyway, so we'll just continue it that way. So thank you for that. And also a couple of other things we want to point out. We have taken a look at the enforcement process and made sure that the positions match the people that we actually have on staff. For instance, the DPW superintendent would be the person that would be the first line of enforcement, and then the appeal goes to the code enforcement officer, who is our building inspector in this village. So we've clarified that. We've also made sure sump pumping into the street and onto the sidewalks is not allowed after experiencing some issues during the winter time where streets were freezing over thanks to some of that type of activity going on. That costs a lot of money for the salt that we have to put out there, the overtime from DPW, and a lot of other dangers that come with it. Just some minor modifications here and there on the snow, snow removal, ice removal from sidewalks during the winter time were carried on throughout there as well. Things that we've noticed haven't been the most perfectly stated pieces of code inside the sidewalk code. While we have the opportunity, we wanted to take care of those as best we could to perfect what we've noticed was not so perfect in this whole thing. Anybody else want to give an assessment? Sean, if you want to talk, use your microphone still if you can. Thank you.
Yeah, I think overall, I've been working on sidewalk law for a better part of 2 years, if not more. And the one thing that always it seems to be my sticking point is, and it seems to be unpalatable, or there's a lack of political will, is creating a mechanism to address the 60+ gaps that we currently have in our sidewalk continuity on streets that currently have sidewalks for the most part. And I've been talking about this for a couple of years. There needs to be a mechanism to address those locations where there's gaps in sidewalks. Sadly, this law is woefully incomplete because it does not address that. There's a huge hole in it and creates a gap where people that currently don't have a sidewalk will have no financial obligation to do anything about it. However, if you do have an existing sidewalk, you will now be compelled and penalized essentially compared to your neighbor as having to repair or replace your sidewalk if it's not in compliance with village standards. I think this law in its current form is wholly unfair and unjust. It penalizes one group of property owners while unfairly benefiting a whole other group of property owners. I don't think we should pass a law that isn't equally fair to every property owner. In this state, it is not. And I can't in good conscience vote for this.
Anybody else want to give a brief assessment of the current law that's in front of us? Not necessarily the wish list, but what you see as highs and lows, I guess, is where we go with this usually in the presentation.
Yeah, I'd like to just comment. The main purpose of this is to improve the walkability and access by all individuals on our sidewalk system. As you might remember way back when we did the economic development survey, sidewalks were the #1 issue. In fact, they were even over infrastructure, which is kind of hard to believe, but it was the #1 issue in this community. And this law, should address that. The second thing to consider is we are in the middle of doing an ADA transition plan, which will, in a couple of months, give us the data on all of our sidewalks. When we did the pedestrian and bicycle plan, we only did the main part of the village and didn't include the north end where there are sidewalks. This will cover the whole village and will assess all the sidewalks for whether they meet ADA standards. So we will have shortly the information as to which are the most the needed sidewalks that need fixing. One thing we did put into this law, which is in now, is that if the sidewalk is buckled and doesn't meet ADA because of a public tree, a sidewalk tree, then the village will take on that responsibility. And I believe that's a fair law, because why should a property owner have to fix a buckled sidewalk when it was the public tree that caused the problem. So I think that's a major improvement that is in this law. But I agree with Sean that leaving out sidewalk gaps, which largely were caused by either current or former property owners taking a sidewalk out. There's lots of locations where you can pretty well see that there was once a sidewalk there, and that folks have taken it, have removed it. So that's my comment.
Well, that's a little choked up right now. I think about sidewalks here.
Sorry, everyone. I have a persistent, annoying cough that does not need to happen. I think this is a good first start. I think this is the first part of the conversation about addressing our broken sidewalks. There's a lot of broken sidewalks, a lot of sidewalks buckling, definitely instances where each piece they're separated by inches, not like a little quarter inch sometimes. So I think that addresses that, and then also allows us to take that next step as a board to take our reimbursement schedule and put it outside of it. Because what's happening, and we're finding in a lot of our law, things are included in the law that really should be part of a fee schedule. And so this just takes us in the next step. It makes this something that we can, work toward to continue to perfect, I guess, is the right way to say it. I think there's a way that we could perhaps work to incentivize people to consider putting in sidewalks. But I think what my concerns are right now, if we have like a sort of forced mechanism on people that currently don't have sidewalks, that's a really gigantic cost in comparison to like maybe some simpler fixes, or so this is a start. I'd love to hear from the community. That's really what we're here for. And I hope our board can move forward and get this started, because at this rate, it's going to be June, you said, and people should be getting sidewalks done, and we'd like to see them get fixed. So love to hear from everyone else, though. Thanks.
Should go back for the record. The public hearing started at 7:02 p.m. So we'll take note of that. And at this point, we will
I'd like to add one more thing.
At some point, we would like a public to speak.
Absolutely. I want to provide them with some facts. So they may not, I can answer some questions ahead of time. So does anyone know what is more dangerous than a sidewalk that's not ADA compliant? Does anyone? No sidewalk. Far more dangerous, because you know why? It forces people to walk in the street. And studies have shown when you walk in the street, you increase your chance of a pedestrian vehicle crash exponentially. So if the point of this law is pedestrian safety, it doesn't do it. It doesn't cut it. And in fact, studies have shown when you have sporadic sidewalk, their expectation is when they see sidewalks, that there's sidewalks and there won't be pedestrians in the roadway. Then all of a sudden the sidewalk ends and somebody pops out in the roadway. Child going to school. Somebody just on a walk. And it increases their chances of injury or death tremendously. So if this is about pedestrian safety, it's really lacking until we address those gaps. And I thought that was the purpose of this, was to increase pedestrian safety. Now, I'm not saying fixing the existing sidewalks won't do that, but by leaving the gaps, it'll have little to no impact overall, and the overall hazard. Now, I don't know, since we already know about all these locations, perhaps the village is liable now. So when somebody walks in the street when there's no sidewalk, and we didn't do anything to address it, I assume now we're liable for any damages.
Okay. So just to clarify a couple of things here. number one, I know 2 residences on High Boulevard that are waiting for an increase in the rate to install sidewalks, let alone repair sidewalks. So one of the things we're seeing is that you pay people more as an incentive, they're going to be more willing to actually go and install or fix their sidewalk. At $2 and whatever it is, $2.25, $2.50 right now, it's not much of an incentive. And the idea here was to get this thing into a position where you're incentivizing installation. Number 2, and Carl, I promised not to use the gavel over my head when I said this, but I spoke to NICOM after Ben had concerning an issue with respect to, I did tell her, and she was busy that day, and I asked her if she wanted to call because it was a topic that didn't make sense ultimately. With respect to forced installation, here's the issue. Where there is not sufficient right-of-way for a sidewalk that would require the sidewalk to overlap onto actual owned land by the landowner adjacent, you cannot force their hand to install that sidewalk on their land because it's a pre-existing non-conforming condition that is not in the right-of-way. If there is sufficient right-of-way on those properties, yes, you can. Welcome to the Village of Ballston Spa, where we have a centuries-old tradition of really not having consistency in our streets and our rights-of-way throughout the entire community. We have to go to a map-by-map process every street we go to determine what the right-of-way is or isn't. So when you talk about inconsistency, at the end of the day, when you can identify some people you can impose a force on and some you cannot, that is inconsistent as well. The idea here is to make sure we can figure out a way to incentivize folks to start doing what we were hoping they would do, and $2 ain't going to cut it anymore.
Yes.
Hold on, I think, okay, sorry.
Yes, I mean, increasing the reimbursement rate, I don't think it's been increased for, 30 years, will help. But there are people in this village who will not be incentivized. Absentee landlords probably aren't going to go ahead and fix it because they don't live here. As far as the issue of right-of-way, do we have any idea how many areas? I know on where I live, the right-of-way is plenty. There's no problem there. I mean, there may be a few streets where right-of-way will be an issue and we'll work them out just like you did for Front Street, where the landowner agrees that, you can go on my property to do a sidewalk and then it becomes, public property. I think we can handle that situation. I don't think that's the overwhelming situation. I think in most cases, the sidewalk is in the right of way, including the gaps, that exist. And the gaps were, I suppose, if we can prove that there was once a sidewalk there, then it won't be an issue.
I'm not sure what you're talking about on Front Street. The issue there was that there was a misfiring on the easements provided back when, and so the easements are in the street instead of on the sidewalk in certain cases, and so we have to redo those because there was a surveying error done back decades and decades ago, and so we're trying to resolve that at this point, because at this point the whole idea is you don't want the landowner to bear the responsibility, even if their sidewalk is well kept, to have the liability attached to it because we don't own it by accident ultimately. Okay. What we're going to do is this, out of fairness, it is 7:18, and we're going to, I'm going to move to temporarily adjourn the public hearing until after the presentation by the superintendent and school board president. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
A second by Sean Raymond, and it's at 7:18 p.m. Check that actually now, 7:19 p.m. That will temporarily adjourn this discussion. All in favor? Let's go roll call on that, just to be formal.
Trustee Raymond?
Aye.
Trustee Pizza? Aye. Trustee Formos? Aye. Mayor Lawson?
Aye. So at this point, we're going to go a little out of order, obviously, but again, out of respect for our guests, I've had the pleasure of talking with the first person I'll introduce number of times this year. There is a real excitement with his, let's say, elevation, because he was the principal at the high school for a good period of time. and was much loved over there. And when the superintendent position opened up, he threw his hat into the ring, became an interim superintendent. And I told Jason Furneaux, the school board president, it's got to be Duca ultimately at that point, because of just how universally loved he was by not just the students, but the families entirely. We are very fortunate to have a school district in our area that is led by him right now. Also, Jason Furneaux, the school board president, has done a fantastic job in making sure that all the candidates were vetted and making sure that things are running well right now, to a point where there was no viability in the board election. Nobody felt the need to step forward because they felt overall the school's running well, the school board's running well. So they had a pretty easy election, a pretty easy school budget vote last week as well. What we wanted to do is invite them to come and just address where things have been over the last school year as we conclude things and where they might be going moving forward. So Dr. Duca, if you'd like to, and Jason, come on up there. We're going to ask you to. And if you could just turn on the button on the lectern there and talk right into that microphone. They're drawing straws, see who goes first. Go
Thank
ahead.
you very much for that introduction. Privileged to be here. So we just came tonight to talk about kind of, give you a brief summary of the school district, where we're headed, some of the things that we're doing in the district and how we want to kind of partner with the town. And we're all about giving back and community service and kind of building opportunities for our students. So, I'll start briefly with our mission. Our goal is always a meaningful diploma for all our students. And, we provide an excellent education for our kids, but more so we like to focus on opportunities for them. And that comes, starts in kindergarten all the way up through when they leave us as seniors. We're providing opportunities for all our students. We're a large suburban school district. We're about 4,000 students, but it has the feel of a smaller district for sure, because we really do tailor a lot of things and opportunities for our kids. So really, whatever interests students have in our district, they can kind of pursue that, whether it be the arts, sports, career and tech ed, higher level classes, different things that we offer at the high school and middle school. We're implementing an IB program at the middle school. We currently have, leaders as young as kindergarten all the way through senior year. We have a team out in Michigan for Odyssey of the Mind, an elementary team. And so we're very proud of them. And so, okay, yeah, go ahead, please. And so, we're committed to preserving and improving our programs and services. We have a lot of great things in place, and part of our goal is always looking at our resources, seeing what we can do to improve what we already have, taking account of interests of the community, of our students and stakeholders, and seeing if we can add things to our programming across the board that are going to really benefit our kids when they leave. I've been in the district 8 years. I started as an assistant principal and as a principal at the high school for the past 5 years before having this opportunity. And really one of the things that I've always worked on with our students and families is life after school. How are you going to be a productive citizen? What are your goals? And so that's something that we talk to our kids about at a very young age, goal setting and making sure that when they achieve that goal, they don't just stop, they set another one. And we also talk about opportunities, and while we do have many, many opportunities for our kids, I think one of the things we do really well is showing our kids how to seize what's in front of them and use it to achieve their goals. I as the principal, I would often meet with families and students, sometimes students who may be struggling, and, mom and dad would be sitting at my table with the students, and we'd have a real kind of open and honest conversation. I'm not a yeller, but I like to put all the facts on the table and really join and partner with the families, because I think that's what really makes our district different. We're always reaching out to the community, whether it be families or stakeholders or any of the towns. And we always pride ourselves on giving back as well. So you go ahead, please. Sorry. And so, this graphic here kind of, we're committed to several things in this district. And the bottom line is we're committed to maximizing our student success, because success is going to look different for all kids. There's no cookie cutter success for everyone. But we really learn how to do that by working with the families, working with the community, tailoring our education to our students to allow them to kind of pursue their interests, because it's really important for a student to have a common interest, like we call it a hook. If they have that hook, they're going to come to school every day. They're going to want to be productive. They want to stay in school. And having those hooks, having those opportunities is what keeps our kids going. Not everyone is going to be, there for academics all the time, but if they have a club that they're interested in, or a sport, or they play an instrument, they have that hook, or they have a relationship with, a teacher or a counselor, somebody that they trust. They have that hook. And that's something that we're constantly looking to grow for our district and our students. And so, we're committed to making sure that our students are safe and secure and our staff is safe and secure. But we're also committed to high quality curriculum and instruction across the board, K-12, and really partnering with the family, with the community. We have a lot of clubs and a lot of, community service that our students do. We're always looking to give back. And that's something that our administrators and myself, and I know the board, we always push that with kids, to give back to your community, to go out there and provide service, to do little things when no one's working. That's something that we're always trying to have our students do. And so whenever we are making decisions, we ask ourselves kind of three key questions. And this kind of runs the gamut of when we're making decisions for not only our district, but our students. What can we do to make the school and classroom experience more engaging and relevant for students? How can we leverage educational change to our advantage that might otherwise present barriers? So something that we always try to do is remove barriers for kids. And what can be done to ensure equitable outcomes for all students and helping them reach their full potential? Because that's really the name of the game, right? We want to make sure that we're helping students, removing barriers so that they can reach their full potential and so that they can pursue whatever they want. We have a lot of students go on to 2- and 4-year schools. We have a lot of students going to the trade. We have a lot of students going to the military. Workforce. These are all things that we're trying to instill and grow in our students on a day-to-day basis, starting at a very young age, so that they have these opportunities, they have these goals with them, and that they can leave us knowing that they're going to be productive, successful citizens. And so our continued areas of focus, curriculum, instruction, and assessment, positive student behavior and wellness. We want to be able to recruit, retain, and develop personnel, our communication, our long-range planning. And so, part of our long-range planning is certainly the budget and making sure that we're not just going year to year, but we're planning out 3, 4, 5, 8 years, and making sure that the decisions we're making today are sustainable and they're not going to get us into a sticky situation 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line. And so that's something that our business official and myself, we take a look at everything in the district when we're building the budget, all the programs, all the personnel, and we're really trying to prioritize what is best, what's going to have the largest positive impact on our students.
And by the way, we should business guy, Brian Sirianni. He is great with the budget and really impressed by the amount of information he provides each year on that.
Yeah, sure is. He's one of the best for sure. And so just, briefly here, we'll just kind of go over, our 23-24 budget goals, and these are kind of fall in line. There are some here that are specific to elementary, some that are specific to middle school, high school, and then we have a few that are across the board K-12. And so supporting that ongoing implementation of reading, math, science, and social emotional learning curriculum at the K-5 level. We've done a lot of work over the past 3 or 4 years in kind of revamping how we do things, and we'll continue to do that, and make adjustments and kind of, do our internal audits to see what's working, where we can improve. One of the things that I'm always looking to do is find areas of improvement and looking at things from a creative lens, from talking to different stakeholders, and pursuing ideas that might be out of the norm, but that'll be good for our kids in the end. Supporting the continued implementation of the middle school IB program. So this is something that we're about 2 years in, and a middle school full school-wide IB program is the goal. And that is something that we are continuing to work on. The budget supports professional development, curriculum enhancement, but also instructional teacher leaders, which some people call them department, chairs and whatnot, but they are teachers in the district at different core areas that will continue the work of implementing the IB program. Creating additional learning opportunities at the high school. One of the things that I'm very proud of is, we send several students to Wish-We BOCES every year to pursue trades. The 4 big ones that we send kids to are culinary, welding, cosmetology, and heavy machinery. But we also have a pretty robust in-house program. And so next year we'll run a full gamut of career and tech ed classes in the construction strand. We have 173 students taking courses like principles of construction, house wiring, carpentry, finished cabinetry, plumbing, and HVAC. And so once you take that basic principles of construction class, then you can take the other classes. And so what's unique for us is that we have a construction site right on campus. If you go to a baseball game, you look in center field, there's like a tiny home that's there. So we have the trailers that are donated and they're demolished by our students, but then they're rebuilt into tiny homes. And the really cool part about it is each class has a specific role in the building of that home. And then when the home's completed, we look to donate it to a local veteran. So they get real hands-on, real world experience. They're going out there in the snow, the rain. We have all the gear for them. But we have a lot of students who really love that. And they're taking, 3 and 4 classes a year to kind of enhance that kind of strand. And so one of our K-12 goals is continuing to implement our MTSS. So that stands for multi-tiered systems of support. And so starting at the kindergarten level all the way up, we have different tiered interventions. So if a student's struggling both academically or behaviorally, we have a lot of different things that we try before they are referenced to Committee on Special Education. All right. Sometimes that happens and they need additional supports through an IEP or a 504. But there are a lot of good work is being done at the tier 1 and tier 2 intervention level to really help students academically and also with behavioral modifications coming off the pandemic. Also, I don't give a lot of detail on this ever, but we're always looking to improve our facilities safety-wise. So the budget supports keeping our 2 school resource officers in the fold, but also bolstering our physical plant as far as safety, but also cybersecurity and different threats that a school district might have. And then one of the things that we're very proud of is to continuing to offer programming on the special ed front. Next year, we are creating a self-contained program specific to elementary students diagnosed with autism. And so we have a lot of students that we outplace, but we're bringing those students back into the district. And by doing that, it's a cost savings. So we're saving the money of outplacement in order to pay for this particular program that we run in school, in-house. And so we're always looking to make sure that, we're offering, specialized programming for our students with an IEP or a 504. And so that just kind of gives a brief, introduction and flavor of the school district.
Well, I'll pause for a second in case anyone has any questions for Dr. Duca, because he's really the expert who's delivered all this content. So if anyone has any questions or comments.
I heard you talking a lot about the students. What are you doing to engage the teachers to keep them focused on what they're doing? And what are you doing to support them and bring them along to make them a better teacher with all the programs you're doing?
And that question is for Paul Farnell, just for the record.
Absolutely. So we have a really robust professional development catalog. And that's something that we've worked on the past 2 or 3 years. We have a lot of offerings from all different, and everything that we talked about here, we have professional development to back it up so that teachers can learn and grow. When new teachers come in, we used to have kind of a 1-day orientation. Now it's a 3-day where they get a full 3 days orientation. They meet everyone in the library, then they go off to their school. We do a bus tour of our district so that they kind of get to learn the different parts of our district. But I would say, we're always looking to bolster our professional development with our staff, whether it be a book study. We've started to focus a lot on PLCs, or professional learning communities. So the staff are identifying topics of need. And it's almost, I taught for 15 years and the best PDs I ever went to were not outside people, but when you had kind of an expert on the inside that would talk about, things that are working, because I would know where to find them. And so it might be a math teacher. I taught social studies, and I could go down to his or her office and say, hey, I saw that PD you gave, do you have any tips for me? So always looking to kind of grow in-house as well. So we send a lot of folks to different trainings, but always the expectation is if we're going to send you someplace, you're going to bring something back for our staff.
Other question.
Sure.
You got about a ratio of 50-50 girls to boys.
Yeah.
And down in your lower grades, 6th, 5th, 4th, you have a very lacking in some of your buildings. There's only one male teacher.
Sure.
A lot of the boys need, and the students need a father figure down at that lower end.
Mhm.
What are you doing to bring in more male teachers?
Yeah.
In those levels?
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of goes along with, our focus of personnel and trying to bring in high quality candidates. When we do have openings, we get involved with different organizations to kind of get the word out that we are looking to hire. We're involved with a couple of other suburban council schools as we've done job fairs to try to attract, just high quality candidates to our district. We are limited by the people who apply. So the more we can do to kind of bolster our district to folks to make them want to come to Ballston Spa and work, I think that's the best way to attack it.
Well, when you look at your pay scale, Ballston is probably at the top or near the top of pay scale.
Mhm.
What's keeping people away then?
Yeah, I mean,
Are you not getting men applying to teach?
that's a good question.
So somebody modeled sidewalk in the audience, just for those wondering why we're laughing here.
At the lower levels, I mean, it historically, elementary level is dominated by female teachers. And so, working a lot with the different local colleges to try to reach out and get more males in those programs, I think will benefit us in the long run for sure.
Are you pursuing?
Sure. Yeah, we have conversations with local colleges all the time. We work with student placements. We have some teachers who retire that then become kind of like adjunct professors. And so they place students with us. We're close to hiring a couple male teachers at the elementary level for different positions. But it's always something that we're looking to do. And I think one of the biggest ways to achieve that success is, I kind of equate it to, when I was at the high school, it's almost like a teaching hospital. Sometimes high schools don't want to have those interns come in, but I think that's the best way to kind of showcase what you do in a school. You have these young folks that are coming in, trying to learn the trade, learn the craft. And if they have a successful placement in a school that they really like, they're more apt to apply. So we might not have an opening right away, but we do get a lot of folks that apply elsewhere. And then when we do have an opening, we do get a lot of people to apply from other districts. So that's something that's worked for us.
Dr. Duca, from seeing me at the schools, for me, coming off COVID, the outside activities, outside the classroom activities especially, are something that are near and dear to me because of the resurgence we've seen, not just in sports, but also the arts, music, et cetera, that so many of your students have joined in to participate in over the last year that I've been around here and around the schools especially. It's great to see it, but as you said, there's still some challenges from what COVID dealt to us. And I wanted you, if you could, maybe elaborate on that. What challenges are we still overcoming at your school's level in terms of socially or even beyond? And what are you doing to try to address those, to maybe, as I always say, there's two groups in this country that I think got robbed the most from COVID, the youth and the elderly in this country. And in this case, the youth is what's affected on your end. So if you could address that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the past 2.5 years, 3 years, definitely set some students back, whether it be social, emotional, or academically. And so when I talk about that MTSS, that budget goal that we're supporting, a lot of that has to do with counseling and in-house supports to help students who may have struggled the past 2.5, 3 years, social, emotional. Academically, it's going to take time. It's going to take 2 or 3 years to kind of get back to where things were. One of the things that we've brought over into our general fund is our summer success program for K-8, but also high school summer school. We ran it last year, full in-house summer school, and that was an opportunity for any student to gain up to 3 credits. And so we had 284 credits awarded at the high school. But even the K-8 summer success program, we had upwards of 250 students total K-8. It was about 170 K-5, and these are students who were affected by the shutdown, were affected by remote learning, do have gaps in their education. And so we're trying to identify them using that MTSS process, but also providing those opportunities for them to get back up to grade level and beyond. So those are some of the things that we're doing. One of the things I'm real proud about district-wide, though, is our willingness to kind of try and get back to normal with the extracurriculars, with the sports and the concerts and our plays and things. I think that was so important. That was really something that kids were affected by. Yeah, we're in school for academics, but there's also a big social component. And when I talk about those hooks, there was a year and a half there where we didn't have the opportunity to give a kid something that they're really looking forward to. And so by providing all these things for our students, we're starting to bring them back and get them back connected with our district and our community. And like I said, it's going to take time. I don't expect it to happen overnight, but we are definitely doing some good work and some positive things to help all our students.
For those that don't know, Mean Girls, which was the high school presentation, was nominated for 6 Capital Region Awards. And 2 were taken by Ballston Spa. Mean Girls itself as best musical in their class, and Roman Mangino as best supporting actor. I do have to throw in a plug though, because Carla's son was nominated for best actor in Once Upon a Mattress and did not win, I don't believe, but still to be nominated. Yeah, Ballston Spa didn't get it either, but congratulations to him. But I was looking for you to get best cameo appearance for Mean Girls. No such nomination came though. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Peter Martin.
Pete Martin, Chesterwood Court. I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Sure. We've been doing a lot of work with the school for over 20 years. It's a first-class organization. What you have done is unbelievable. I'm so proud to be associated with the Ballston Spa High School. It starts with the students, all courteous, all excellent. I deal with them all that are doing sports. And it starts with the students, but the coaches demand the respect from the kids and vice versa. Personally, our church is involved with Love in Action, which is who's the lady that helps us with that? Okay. She's excellent. I mean, another program where we're reaching out with the community and we're dealing with the school. One of the best school systems in the state. And I take my hat off to you guys. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I just want to build on what Peter just said. Having been in the village for 40 years and both my kids went through the school system, all 4 of my grandkids are in the school system. My daughter teaches in the school system. Can't say enough about what you guys are doing. It's tremendous. And having gone to that concert the other night, and I saw you there, you there. It was one of the best concerts I came out of. I came out of there with chills, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And it wasn't because of temperature. It is a little cold,
chilly. A new system. It cools it down pretty quick.
You could see the excitement in the students and how they were playing and singing and all that. It was wonderful. One of the best I've ever seen.
And that was Ray Otten for the record there.
Oh,
I'll give you another.
16 Middleburg.
Yes. All my children and grandchildren went through the school. And you also have a dean at Siena College. It's my daughter.
Oh, excellent.
So,
Well, why don't we give Jason an opportunity real quick? And Chris, if after Jason, would that be okay? Just okay. Then we'll go Chris, then Bernadette, then Jason. How's that?
Just a question, but a comment. Again, echo what these 2 gentlemen said with both the music program. It's excellent. Even just seeing Suburban Council there, that was great to see that concert. My wife and I also go to all the concerts with our kids involved as well, just in the school. And we notice again, there's a sort of decorum and respect that comes in our district with parents not getting up and standing in front when you're trying to take pictures of your kids up there and stuff. So again, to hold that standard up there is also great. And also little programs like the outdoor club. I mean, you just have some gems there in the school, like Mr. Ballet. Just work with my one son who's got some special needs. Just that's the thing that's kept him wanting to be involved and stay plugged in with the school. sort of to echo off of that, you mentioned, and I'm glad to hear that with the wraparound sort of with addressing the autistic population in the elementary school. Any plans for anything along those lines with budget being approved on the middle school or the high school level, for example? I know there's some great push-in services that will help monitor. So if a child, let's say, gets misdiagnosed and then maybe they're leaning more on the spectrum when they get a little bit older and that's a little bit more identifiable. I know some of these services are very expensive, $200 an hour, if not more, to have someone go in and monitor your child in the classroom, which sometimes a lot of these behaviors present in the classroom itself.
Yeah.
Any idea for added support for that for parents who might be struggling with that?
Yeah, I mean, my last 2.5 years as the high school principal, I also kind of doubled as the special ed coordinator for grades K-12, or excuse me, 6-12. And so one of the things we try to do is build the complete continuum of services. So you have your students transitioning. And so we look at transition years. So grades 5 to 6 is a big transition year. Grades 8 through 9 is a big transition year. So we want to make sure our services match K-12. And so there were some gaps there, but next year we'll have a complete continuum, 6-12. A couple of things that the budget does support in the middle level is a 15-to-1 special class teacher and also a reading AIS or an interventionist. And so when they do, find students that may be struggling, we work with our SPED department. First we try our MTSS program, our tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions. But ultimately, if there is a need for services that, we do work with our SPED department to provide those. A couple other things that the budget supports was a school psychologist, which is, very, very helpful in the world of SPED, but also a social worker over at Spa Academy, which is one of our non-traditional high school that is housed over at the Hudson Valley campus, 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And that's for students who, for whatever reason, just did not, were not successful in a traditional high school. Might be too big, chronic absenteeism, different things that might be going on, kind of impeding their education. So this is our second year with that. We have 60 students over there and a full-time social worker to work with those students and those families. But yeah, we're always looking to kind of make sure that, if there's an area of need or an area for improvement, we're going to do our best to address it.
That was Chris Dubuque for the record, and Mary Price Bush actually had a question in the back.
Not a question, but Mary Price Bush about the Queen Street. On behalf of the events committee, we just want to thank you for having your middle school and elementary school kids participate in the Birdhouse program, as well as the workforce initiative. And I'm sure you've worked a lot with Mark, but we would like to have the kids involved a lot more with our programs.
Thank you, Mary. Bernadette, another question?
So I'm not saying this just because I graduated from Ballston Spa, but Ballston Spa has some of the most well-rounded children. I really loved hearing what you guys are doing to continue that. I've always known students that come in my family store that are involved with sports and arts and, the academics. And it's just a really wonderful thing that I think is kind of unique to Ballston Spa. I feel like sometimes other schools, other students kind of get in one track or the other. I feel like the kids are all the things, which is just exciting and wonderful. But I did have a question for the people that are maybe empty nesters or, without children. How can they support the school district? You're usually engaged if you have kids, but how do you do that as somebody without kids?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think part of it is, the community outreach that we have different clubs that want to get involved. We have Scotty's Pantry, Scotty's Closet. These are all areas for, community members to get involved and donate, different things. Our Interact Club is something that they work close with Rotary. We're always looking to come up with different ways to engage not only our students, but the community and really kind of showcase, not only our facilities, our buildings, but what our kids can do. So we're open to anything. We're open to any suggestions from community members that might not have a student in the building. Maybe they did at one time and they want to give back or they want to kind of work with us, different partnerships. But that's always something we're looking to explore for sure.
The real answer to your question is become a substitute bus driver.
CDL will hire you right now.
Well, Ryan, I was school board is being vocal on that in the crowd. Just watch the microphone and teaching you.
One or the other.
Sure, absolutely. And yes, I did want to introduce Law Ryan as one of our board members who is also here in attendance. So I grew up in the village. I've lived within the school district here for the last 30+ years. It's been my pleasure to serve on the school board now for 5 complete years, finishing up my 5th year. And throughout all of those decades, it's just amazing the linkage between the school districts and specifically the village here and our surrounding towns. You know, we talk about how great the students are. Well, part of the reason why the students are great is because the parents are great and the families are great and the whole community is great. So recently, you know, the explicit discussion, the pronouncements that you've all made about how we're all in this together. We want to have the partnership. We want to have the support. It's just wonderful for all of these years and events that have already taken place. We want to thank our village leaders. We want to thank Chief Bush. We want to thank the fire companies. We want to thank all the village staff who partner with our school for the betterment of our students. And again, just it's wonderful, but it's wonderful because of all of us. And as long as we're all talking and keeping that mindset about we're all in this together, I think it's just going to keep going. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you. And just to throw in a plug for those that want to attend school board meetings, they are on Wednesdays, first and third Wednesdays at 7 p.m.
In the high school.
Thank you, in the high school library. It's still, I have to look them up, even though I come to too many of them probably for your loving or liking on that. But it's good to learn about what's going on, honestly, in the school system. And you can watch them on YouTube as well. But coming in person is more than welcome by the school board, Dr. Duke, et cetera. Okay, wow, I get a new battery because I'm realizing my light is low here, as they say. I'm going to make a motion to resume the public hearing. I think we're still good for a second at least. To resume the public hearing on proposed local law number 2 of 2023 at 7:51 p.m. Trustee Fondanza, Trustee Cormos, discussion. By the way, I should do as Jason does for the students that attend, student council members that attend, that they're free to leave at this point to go do their homework. They have just booked out the door because they know our meeting's gonna last way too long. So smart move on their part. Thank you again to them. Discussion over for this topic. All in favor? Let's go. Roll call.
Trustee Raymond.
Aye.
Trustee Fondanza. Aye. Trustee Cornwell. Aye. Mayor Rossi.
Aye. Anybody that wants to speak, you'll have 5 minutes. Please come up to the podium for this, or we'll get the microphone to you somehow if we can't perform that. Paul, is your hand up there? Okay, come on up and state your name and address, please.
Paul Farnan, 27 McLean Street. I just want to talk about 2 items on the sidewalk. I have to change my glasses. The last item, which is 174-21E. And what you're talking about is that the village, will be responsible for replacing the sidewalks if the trees are caused by the village. As it stands now, you're already reimbursing the homeowner for a certain amount of money per square foot. That cost is borne by every single resident in this village. Now, and I've driven around the village in the last couple of days, and I've been here for a number of years. And probably 50% of your problems with the sidewalks are trees. So what you're proposing is to put the burden of the sidewalk replacement on 50% of the residents in this village, while giving the other 50% that has damage to the sidewalk due to trees a free ride. I don't agree with that. I think you should leave it like it is. Your home, the trees, rather the village damage by putting them in where they are or not. It should stay like the homeowner's responsibility. that E should be taken completely out of this. Write up and go back to where it was. If you're going to increase the amount you want to give them, but don't put the burden of replacing all these sidewalks on 50% of the homeowners, and you gave the other 50% a free ride. That's not fair, no matter whose fault it is. So I suggest E would be taken right completely out of here. The other item is you're not allowing any discharge of sump pumps across the sidewalks. You have a huge problem with that. I see it on our street. I agree with it, but you just can't tell a homeowner, you can't pump it across the sidewalk and onto the road and say, that's your fault, you deal with it. They tried it 20 years ago to have that stopped, and nothing's been done with it since. You gotta give them a plan B. So let me give you a hint. Doubleday Woods bought the property up behind McLean Street, that wooded area. They blacktopped their driveway. They trenched underneath it. They put a drainage down over that hill. Now all the water runs down that hill, right down into McLean Street, and the lower end of McLean Street floods. The law says the water's not supposed to run off your land any faster than natural. Well, it pours down over there, and now McLean at the lower end floods because someone allowed them to put that drainage in upstairs instead of spending the money and digging a trench out to the road and put it in the storm sewers. Shame on this village for doing that to McLean Street. Now, the other item is many places in this village, including the back of my house, behind my workshop, has a drain in it. That drain goes from behind my workshop out to East High Street. And along that is two more drains. And you're saying, well, you're making, you're giving that homeowner a benefit by helping drain his land. True, you are, but you also gave that homeowner a responsibility of allowing all the water around the 4 or 5 homes around my neighbor, that drain into my yard, run under my workshop and into that drain and out to the storm sewers. There's another one just down the street from my house that has the same thing. They had a child there that was handicapped. They thought the child would get in there with the water because you could put a rowboat in the springtime. And they put a drain in, and that drains out to the street. There's a number of those. So when you say you're benefiting only the homeowner that gets them, you're not. You're benefiting 5 or 6 homes all around that house. So you ought to take another look at putting drains in. People will accept them and running it out to the street, and you'll drain big sections of this village that way. So I think you ought to take a look at that. And as far as, like I said, you can't pump it out into the street. Find something else. Talk to the homeowner, because if you make them pump it out in the backyard, it's going to run into the cellar and he's going to pump it back out there again because the village is a swamp. That's what we have here. So don't make a plan A without a plan B. Step up to the homeowners. You got to help them with this. So I would say, I would not have that in here right now until you come up with a plan to help the homeowners. Don't strap them with this and then stick a fine on them, or because they won't know what to do. And that's why it's out in the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else in the audience? Yes.
Marilyn Stevenson, 45 West High Street. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the sidewalk code, and I do appreciate the comments that Trustee Raymond made about the disparity in the existing code and how that would impact us as a community. And Trustee Cormos, I'm glad to know that the ADA inventory will help us understand the total big picture, because it was not clear from the code that that's underway. I had only wished a better public outreach effort that the village could have undertaken to at least get the word out about the code without using social media. That's just a personal concern that I have about all these major village changes coming out just through social media. For the most part, the code has set some lofty goals, aspiring that ADA compliant safe sidewalks, which I agree with, but falls short of explaining how that's going to be accomplished. There are some good points in the code that are worthy of the entire village to aspire to, but there are also some parts of the code that are still vague or arbitrary or discretionary, and I don't agree with those or need more clarification. With an overworked DPW crew and a part-time building inspector, no one in the Village of Friends will feel comfortable reporting non-compliance issues with respect to a sidewalk code. The village's lack of follow-through in the past will still continue because that's the way it has always been in the village. And without a plan or some sort of a timetable to indicate implementation, things will really not change. I don't see that happening just with the change of the code. It's great that the price for the cost sharing is going up. That's great. It's, just not timely. I do challenge the trustees to bite the bullet and realize that it's really time for the village to assume the responsibility of the sidewalks as village property. That truly will level the playing field. The sidewalks are village property. I have a certified survey of my property on West High Street. I know where my property boundaries are, and they end before the sidewalk. The sidewalks are part of village infrastructure, very important part of it, just like the streets or the water delivery system or our street lighting. And they're critical for us to be a vibrant village. I'm more in favor of the village taking over control of sidewalk creation and improvement for existing situations right now to meet that goal of a fully accessible and safe ADA compliant network of sidewalks. Just like I pay for water and sewer use, I would gladly pay for existing community-wide sidewalk creation and repair if it could be planned in the next 7 to 10 years and executed. Do I want the village to do it? Probably not. Would I like to see that accelerated with the private sector doing that through village applying for grants and accelerating that implementation? Definitely. So that's kind of where I stand on this. I think there's still some questions I have with respect to some parts of the code. I don't see specifically certain things that I've experienced in the past described. For example, I had a next door neighbor who at one time would park their car on the sidewalk, not just one car, but 2 cars, or block the sidewalk. I don't see that carefully described or articulated in the code. I see other vague references to other things. I'm kind of concerned about that, but I think it's time, if the village is to move forward into the 21st century, let's, bite the bullet and realize that the village owns the sidewalk, and the easiest way to get to that goal of ADA compliant and safe passage through the village is for the village to take the bull by the horns and make those sidewalks the same. And let's pay for it, just like we pay for our water. Thank you.
Couple notes. Somebody in the crowd just blurted out a tax, and having done the assessment on what the cost would be in that situation, because this was brought up a week or two ago, I assumed in the numbers about a $400,000 increase between personnel, materials, labor, et cetera. And that would equate to, if you look at each percent of tax, property tax, around $18,000 to $19,000, about a 21 to 22% increase in village taxes. So one way or another, either through the installation yourself and upkeep or through the tax system, you're going to pay one way or the other in that situation. It's just a question of how you get zocked worse, I guess, ultimately. I think one of the things you have to be careful about is that when the village does work like this, we have to use prevailing wage, which if we can't do it ourselves, we have to go out to use prevailing wage approach, and we'll knock the socks off the pricing, whereas somebody that lives on a street or in a piece of property that has a sidewalk needs to be handled would not necessarily have to pay prevailing wage in that situation. And so those are some of the things that you learn the hard way in this job. And one of the things I just want to say, I do take issue, Marilyn, on something, because actually we are responding to sidewalk issues routinely. For instance, the Union Fire Company situation was a sidewalk violation question, and within 2 days after a complaint from the fire department itself, we were out there using the mechanism actually that's in this code change, applying it in real time to address the questions and issues presented in that situation. And we are working to get that handled right now with the apron being redone. We also have a situation on Chapman Street where hedge has overtaken the sidewalk over there. Jennifer has been running lead on this, essentially, that we've all signed off in a letter. And we got a reaction from the landowner, and they are willing to work with us. Already got an arborist involved to understand whether or not the hedge can be cut back without killing the hedge. And we're going to engage our park and tree board to get involved at this point too, because we want to make sure we're not doing something problematic to that hedge while making sure we regain access to the sidewalk as we need it. And that's how the process should work and does work under this administration. We just want to make sure it's codified correctly so people know where to go and how to go, but we are actively pursuing those things. So while maybe it hasn't been done in the past, we take every complaint at village offices seriously, and Jennifer is usually the number one victim of getting the calls and having to deal with them in real time. And I appreciate the work she puts into this consistently. So I just wanted to clarify on that.
I have a question. Are we still only gonna, enforce the code when there's a complaint? Because I think that is not a great way to do anything. That's traditionally been the way it's done here. Somebody complains and then they fix it. But if, that's pitting neighbor against neighbor, many people are not very comfortable doing that. And there may be sidewalks that are much worse that need attention, but one that's not as bad gets a complaint and it gets fixed.
Well, you're doing your ADA assessment right now, so send in the list of complaints of sidewalks that you encounter as you do it. That's one way to handle it. Ultimately, that's a complaint in the same vein. And so by all means, if that's the way you feel you can get it accomplished, go for it. I think ultimately you don't in real time get to walk every inch of this village, nor does DPW. They focus on certain streets as they have to. And it is what it is at that point. We want to do right by our residents, and we do have to rely to a certain extent on our complaint system. And we do. We address them in real time better than I think it's ever been done, especially since Jennifer now kind of is the equivalent of a DPW typist, they call it in terms of political parlance. She splits her time and basically handles directly with DPW these issues. As we get the complaints, goes straight to Jeff with them and to our building inspector when necessary, and gets things done, or at least opens up the dialogue better than I've seen, for instance, what happened this weekend with that hedge on Chapman. So it's the best answer I can give you, Liz. While I'd love to give you a more perfect answer, it's just not realistic at this point with our staffing in that. Who else has something? Oh, I'm sorry. Sean, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yep.
Well, I just want to quickly state that, there was a list made in the original study. They did a full inventory of the study area and basically numbered. So we can simply give DPW that list as a starting point.
I requested it 2 years ago, so haven't gotten it. Right.
Ray Otten, 16 Middlebrook Avenue. As one who travels around this village a lot and one who needs ADA compliance wherever possible, I can tell you that there's probably a lot more inconsistent sidewalk out there than what people actually realize. And I'm looking forward to seeing this ADA compliancy study done. What I have a problem with what Sean was saying, and I understand, Sean, that, you know, you got to have the connectivity and everything else. What happens to the areas like up by the fairground, that whole development up there that doesn't have a sidewalk? What happens to Colonial Hills that doesn't have a sidewalk? Are they going to be forced to have sidewalks put in? And then what part of Colonial Hills gets it? Do they end where the town line ends and the village line stops? To me, to require somebody to put in a sidewalk where there never has been one, I don't know if that's the way to go about it. I 100% agree. If there was a sidewalk there and you tore it up, replace it. You should. If you've built in this village within the last 10 years, I don't understand why it wasn't in the building codes that you were required to put a sidewalk in.
And I should include that is actually in addition to this, because we learned what you're saying is correct. I did not state that earlier.
House up there on, up on Church Ave, corner church, and I don't remember the, Lewis, is it?
Lewis.
Yes, nice new house. There was nothing but deadly trees up there before, and they didn't put a sidewalk in. Why did they not have a sidewalk put in there? You know, other houses throughout this village, you know, in the last 10 years could have put sidewalks in. They chose not to. Okay, if you've chosen not to put one in, yeah, then I could understand. We do that. But if, you know, if you have a whole neighborhood like Colonial Hills or like, you know, up on top of the hill, how can we require that whole neighborhood to put in sidewalks? It doesn't make sense to me.
I don't think this code requires actually the existing code. What's on the books now says there will be a sidewalk on both sides of every single street in the village. Now, clearly, we never enforced that,
right,
that piece of it.
Well, enforcement aside, why didn't we do that, and why are we taking that away then, I guess?
Well,
so it's sort of two different faces depending on which way we want to look at it. And it's just questions I'm bringing up.
Let me go back to removal,
I
because
have a sidewalk. I've taken care of it. I've had it fixed twice. So I got the $2.
Let me bring up removal quickly. We were talking about this before the meeting, actually. Mr. Jerzak was bringing it up. And so here's the reality. When a village sidewalk exists, and this was some research a Carla's firm had done for us related to the Church Avenue crosswalk situation up by was it Trumbull and or what are the streets up there? Rosewood and that up there. And what we determined was when there's a sidewalk in existence, even if it goes beyond the state right of way, that it becomes village right of way where the sidewalk exists. So if somebody is removing a sidewalk on their own, they're in violation, because that should have been approved by the village, and the village won't approve it unless there's an absolutely compelling need to do it for some reason. So I don't know where this happened, why it happened. It wasn't under my watch, I'll tell you that much, because we would have gotten in front of it to say, replace your divot, basically. That is just the way it is. That doesn't require a code provision. It's now village property per se. And now we just questioned whose responsibility it is to maintain it inside the code itself, et cetera, which we're allowed to do, but it should not be removed. It cannot be removed without authorization. So anybody that's doing that, well, we may be well beyond the time period at this point to go back and handle it with somebody, but moving forward, nobody should be doing it, period. Were you looking up the question about the current status of the law about sidewalks on both sides of the streets?
Well, it is in it is in 174.1, the initial part of it, but we just took it, and just because it hasn't been enforced, I mean, that's enforcement of everything is an issue. But but it's included in the new part of it, indicating that all new construction is required to have sidewalks before issuance of a certificate of occupancy. There's an ability for a waiver by the planning board. And it talks about that sidewalks, how they're to be constructed and things of that. So this board crafted 174.1 to make it more ADA compliant and to make sure that, to your point, Ray, you're building a house here, you gotta put a sidewalk, you have to put a sidewalk in unless there's a waiver by the planning board. That, I believe, was put in, and I don't mean to take away from your time because this is your public hearing, not mine. But the reason that the waiver was put in, and the board can speak to this, was for like Colonial Hills reasons. They would have to go to the planning board and say, we want a waiver for a sidewalk to be put in. Things of that nature.
I guess that is even more confusing to my simple mind. Why all these houses that were built in this village over the last 10 years or so, why they didn't have sidewalks put in? Why did they have
That CO did exist.
No, that's new.
Oh, that's new.
In this law.
Oh, okay. I missed
Right,
that.
that's brand new in this one. We put that.
That's what simple mind.
No, it was not. One of the dangers, though, also of having, let's say, something that's stated that it tries to go at the gaps instead of the neighborhoods, to say, well, if there's a sidewalk on one side of a street, then the entirety of the street has to have a sidewalk. So now let's take an instance where somebody in Colonial Hills, on their own spontaneity, puts in a sidewalk. Now, does that obligate the entire street in Colonial Hills to put in sidewalks as well at that point? What happens there? And that's where this becomes off the rails a little bit if we can't define it well and just throw in language trying to cover it. And it's another concern that we had in this whole thing, in the back and forth we've been having the last couple of weeks about this. I just want to be clear that there is no perfect way currently to get to the gaps that we know of, but we can work toward it with Carla, with NICOM if need be, et cetera, because they experience this too. I think on a semi-frequent basis. But one thing that Wade Beltramo said to me clearly was, we've attempted, with people he's talked to from the village, attempted to take a simple approach to find a simple solution for a very complex issue when it comes to filling in the gaps scenario. And we're learning that the hard way by trying to go through this process right now. But the question is this code right now an improvement over what is in existence to help move things forward? And then we continue to revisit and revise down the line with additional phases of sidewalk code changes ultimately. I heard a click over here. So
Yeah, I think that issue which you just described, somebody in Colonial Hill puts in sidewalk. There are no sidewalks in Colonial Hills, Forest Hills, or Chesterwood. We just put in, as of today, we're not going to require sidewalks in those developments. We can just clearly put it in the code if we wanted to. And we will have a detailed description. I don't think there's any other street that only has like one property with a sidewalk on it. Every other street has, a length of sidewalk. And if the goal is to allow people to travel on this basic public infrastructure from one end of a street to the other, you've got to address the gaps, because otherwise it's not ADA compliant. If you run in, you're going down the street and then all of a sudden there's no sidewalk. The person cannot get from point A to point B. What's the point of doing this, piecemeal?
Because if you don't own the land, you can't control the land.
Go ahead.
Yep. I see Gina is next, then Mary, in that order. And Mr. Zach, yep. We'll go, that'll be our next three. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Gina Morosi, 10 Old Glory Lane. Liz, I'm one of those landlords that you just accused of not being interested in doing sidewalks. Well, every one of my properties, my family's properties, has had sidewalks put in with zero reimbursement. You sit there as a trustee without a sidewalk in front of your house. So I resent, I'm speaking, thank you. I resent that comment. Now, as for Marilyn's comments, and combine this with the fact that now we're excluding developments from having to have sidewalks. What I'm hearing is we're going to tax everybody for sidewalks, and those of us that already have sidewalks and paid for our sidewalks with zero reimbursement in my case, are going to have to pay a tax so that you can fill in your gaps. But yet these people that live in these developments, sorry, Pete and Donna, Chesterwood Court, oh, we're not going to make them put sidewalks in, but they're going to pay a tax so that somebody else can get sidewalks. This is insanity. Besides the fact that you're taking control of people's property. As last time I checked, this is still the United States of America. Okay, and if I don't want a sidewalk on my property, you're not going to force me to do it. And your right of way, you're going to say, oh, the village has right of way to an extent, You can't take people's property to put in sidewalks. Start working on what you have, fix what you have. Sean, you said you've been working on this for 2 years. Where the hell you been? 2 years and you still want to delay it. Nothing's getting done. Let's fix what we have. And the tax, let's talk about the tax. Who's going to pay the tax? Is it homeowners? Is it businesses? Is it non-for-profits? Is it churches? Is it the county government? Who's going to pay this tax to have these sidewalks put in? I think that we need to focus on what we have. What we have needs a lot of work. Let's start there. Thank you.
Okay, Mary, I think you were next. Those coming up, just be careful of some of the cables where we resolved most of the issues, I think, tonight. So a little safer getting around here. Ray made sure I did that.
Mary Price Bush, 105 McLean Street. I agree with the sidewalks, being done. I think the top priority should be fixing sidewalks where kids have to walk to school. There's lacking sidewalks both at the Ballston Avenue and Malta Ave schools. We need safety there's over 1,000 kids that walk to school daily. Also, I think the central business district should be fixed before we start going around to residents and saying this needs to be done. As far as 174.4, you want to have the residents remove snow within 8 to 12 hours. You also want them to keep the sidewalks clear of trees, branches, dirt, brush. And I think the people you're trying to help the most, the people who are incapacitated, you're putting them at a great burden because they're not going to be able to get out there. They're not going to be able to make sure their sidewalk is clear. The pedestrian and bicycle master plan says the village of Ballston Spa is home to many low-income individuals and other vulnerable populations such as seniors, homeless veterans, and disabled adults. These are people who you're going to require pay for sidewalks that they can't afford. 174-4, 1 and 2 says, should the owner fail to comply, the village shall then have the authority to perform the work and charge the owner 3 times the actual cost to the village. I don't agree with that. The village is hereby authorized to make said amount a lien against the property and collect the amount due as an assessment against the property in a like manner as collection of taxes. I don't agree with that either. I think if people can't afford it, there has to be a better way. I try to look up to see what the state does. The only thing I could find was the Guide to Planning and Zoning Laws of New York State. I couldn't find anything for villages, but this was for a town. It says, blah, blah, blah. The town board may adopt a resolution that sidewalks and or water mains and or sanitary sewers are required by the planning board pursuant to this section be constructed or installed at the expense of the town. If we require it, then we should find a way to pay for it instead of putting it on people who can't afford it. Thank you.
And just to be clear, Just to be clear, the tripled pricing, as Carla just confirmed me, is already in existence in the code. It's just being cleaned up a little bit with respect to, go ahead.
Actually, that entire section is already in the code. What this board did was they reduced the charge from 4 times the cost of the village to 3 times the cost, and just changed occupant to owner. Nothing else in that was changed. That's actually already in the law right now. And just so everybody knows, what you have in front of you, and I'm sure you all know this, but that's not the full sidewalk law. That's just what was changed. So there are a number of sections that were not touched. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that what you're looking at is not the entire law. It's just the part that was changed by the board.
Peter, you'll be next.
James Jursak, 196 Malta Avenue. I may be repeating what former speakers have said, but I'm not going to stray from that. I am not in favor of the sidewalk law that would force current property owners to install and maintain sidewalks. It is unfair to force owners to do this. I've been a village resident for over 50 years. The fact that my house does not have a sidewalk was one of the reasons I bought it 20 plus years ago. I do not have a problem with children walking down or adults walking on village property right away, which I can say I maintain, which is no problem. Most of it's dead from the salt over the winter. I moved back to Ballston Spa to be closer to family and friends because I was born and raised here. Personally, I do not have the estimated $6,000, $9,000 to have a sidewalk put in prior to any type of reimbursement. I did a little drive around the village the last couple of days, and I looked at sidewalks or lack thereof, or those in disrepair. There are many in disrepair. I agree. They need to be fixed. It is a safety issue. Having said that, with the cost I would have to incur, I would be faced to take out another mortgage to pay for this sidewalk. My wife and I worked hard to pay off our mortgage. Now I'm near my retirement years, as my wife is. Now the village wants to make me spend another $9,000, up to $9,000. I don't know the exact cost yet. Taking away from my retirement. This is a huge financial burden, as mentioned earlier, especially on our senior citizens and those of low income. Please keep in mind, they would also have to pay, in some cases, compensate people to shovel, remove ice and snow, twigs and dirt that this code is going to incur upon them. I do have a few questions the board can get back to me on. Would sidewalks be required? And some of these might have been addressed, but I'm not going to stray, as I stated. Would sidewalks be required on both sides of the street? As noted earlier, Prospect has none. The county fair's been there for 175 years or more. I'm not exactly sure. There is no sidewalk going up Prospect Street, none. We talk about safety. People coming into the village, people who live in the village have been walking up Prospect Street for 100-something years. No sidewalks. I agree, that's a priority, but you're going to incur that cost onto the homeowner. Colonial Hills, been mentioned. Kelly Square, been mentioned. Does the board have an approximate number of properties without a sidewalk? Who will mitigate a dispute between neighbors on where the sidewalk starts on their property? Who's going to pay for what? Who's going to pay for a surveyor's fee if it comes down to a dispute? Will the village be able to afford to give us the reimbursement to all those owners? I remember being here, I think 2 meetings ago, and a trustee stated, well, if we run out of money, we'll just have to pay them later. Something to that respect. If I'm shelling out $9,000 to get this done, I want to be reimbursed what I'm entitled to. I shouldn't have to wait That's ridiculous. What impact will it have on homeowners insurance? I don't know if it's going to go up because now I have a sidewalk I am liable for if something occurs on that property, even though it's village-owned property. The majority decides this is a good idea. I would suggest requiring sidewalks for new construction and when the property owner is transferred to a new owner. This way, there will be no unexpected costs incurred by the current owners. And someone brought to my attention, well, how will the village know if the property transfers hands? Well, a deed is filed with the village clerk when the property is sold to another person. So the village will have access to that information.
James, county clerk.
Real property. But I was told
County, yeah.
the village doesn't get any information of that sort. Perhaps the village should address the condition of existing sidewalks. Because as I stated earlier, some of them are in bad shape and have been for years. As to the what's fair and what's unfair, I have to add this. A billionaire criminal, he goes free. Someone at poverty level, he's in jail. So life isn't fair. It's not fair. I get it. But to force people to put sidewalks on their property or village property, it just is beyond me. I've never had an issue with this village in 50 plus years. This irks me, and I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I think we had the discussion in the workshop about the question of what if the funds run out situation, and there was no inclusion of language to say we would punt to another time period. It was basically we'll use contingency funds and then use fund balance if it comes down to it, because you're correct. It's only fair if you're saying, hey, you'll get this reimbursement, then say, but you'll have to wait 5 years because we've exhausted the funds for this year, the next year, and whatever else comes our way. And so that was the approach chosen in that, because you are correct in that.
Well, at that time, when I heard that,
Yep,
we weren't aware of that after that meeting.
I get it.
Okay.
Peter.
Pete Martin, 20 Chesterwood Court. A lot of comments about the sidewalks. I agree a lot with you said. Marilyn, you had some good points also about the sidewalks. Real quick here, 174-4, if we can clean that up a little bit. Such owner shall remove snow or ice from sidewalk with a whole width thereof within 8 hours of snowfall ceases in daytime. So at 3 o'clock, it stops snowing. 11 o'clock, that sidewalk's gotta be cleared. That doesn't make any sense. We just clear it up and say 24 hours, you gotta clear your sidewalk. I mean, you gotta give a person a chance to clear the sidewalk. I mean, he gets home 6, 7 o'clock from work, he's gonna go out and do the sidewalk that night. It makes little sense to me. I wanna get back on your comments. I said about 1.5 years ago how bad this economy was gonna get. You kind of said I didn't know what I was talking about. Well, we're here now. We're here, and the middle class is hurting big time. As you see, people don't have the money to put a sidewalk in. And when I heard this was gonna come up, I drove around like that gentleman did too. And we do need our sidewalks fixed. Sidewalks is a big issue here. But one person thinking about it for 2.5 years is not cutting the mustard. I think you gotta get a lot of people together and figure out what we should do first, deal with that, and then go forward. But 2.5 years been thinking about it and nothing's been done. I mean, our sidewalks are in really bad shape. But I'm confused, like in Chesterwood Court, if you put a sidewalk in, are we all doing it? Yes or no? I mean, you want everybody to have sidewalks, are we? Would you say yes or no?
I would respond to that there is already parameters.
Okay.
Whether they're not in this law particularly, the parameters were if there were no existing sidewalks within a neighborhood or street, that there wouldn't be necessary requirement to put sidewalks.
Okay, that's good.
in.
I didn't realize that. But there's so many ways we can address this. Like we can start talking to, well, first the areas where it's really bad, that's what we should be going after. But have we talked to contractors that do this for a living? Cement people. I mean, can we get some deals going, work with some of these people? I mean, I think we got to get a lot of people involved with this if we're going to address it. And people that can maybe afford to do it, fine. If they can't, well, then the village is gonna have to pay for it. But to force people to put sidewalks in, it's a really gray area, but we should be addressing the sidewalks that are really bad now, and we haven't. We haven't done it for a long time, so.
I'll just respond to that one thing. So folks that at one point put their sidewalks in, spent the money,
Yes,
they should be penalized because they put a sidewalk in. But those folks who never put a sidewalk in, chose not to, because they don't have any financial obligation, and that's okay.
no, it's not okay. I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
Like, why didn't the people put the sidewalks in? I don't know. Was it code back then? You'd have to find that out. But can you force somebody to put a sidewalk in? You know, is by law, can you? I don't know if you can, and you will have a lot of pushback on that.
I think
And
some
I
of
know the
the,
three of you have power, and I know you can do what you want. I'm just doing ideas.
And just to quickly respond to that, if the village has right of way, can somebody to put a sidewalk in. If we don't have right of way, we can't. Now, maybe we need a mechanism to determine A, if we have right of way, and B, if we don't have right of way, perhaps we need to do it in so that we do have right of way. So,
Okay.
But as you see, it's such a complex issue. So we need more than just yourself thinking about it. We need to get a bunch of people together on this thing, try to figure out the best way to approach it, because there's no easy solution. A lot of people will be upset, and a lot of people, and most people will be upset about putting the sidewalk.
if you remember, a couple of years ago, we did, propose making it, be everybody's responsibility to pay and have the village did. And that was shot down. People were saying, well, I maintain my sidewalk, why should I pay? Or I don't have a sidewalk and why should I pay? I think the real question is, and at least from response that Ben got from NICOM, is a sidewalk is a public good. In other words, you don't put in a sidewalk for your personal use, right? I mean.
Well, you did that, and I didn't think it was done in good taste. You were kind of targeting the non-for-profits from my point of view, and I remember you saying at a revenue advisory meeting when we were leaving that we need to make the not-for-profits pay for their services.
It wasn't about sidewalks on that discussion, and.
Yes, it was. It was definitely was.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
And you said that comment to me
Well,
personally. I took that on my time to talk. So I think that I don't really want the non-for-profits to have to pay for their sidewalks. And the same thing with the people that fix their sidewalks. There's got to be a better way of doing it. If they fixed their sidewalks already, why should they pay another, or you want to call it a fee, not a tax? I don't agree with that. It's like, doesn't make any sense.
I think what turned out to be the reality, which does not allow what you're proposing, which does make some sense, is that a village cannot form, let's say, a district and say, okay, the McLean neighborhood, decides that they want to have complete nice sidewalks and they all pay. Towns can do that. But what we discovered is villages, we can't do a special fee. It has to be in the tax, everybody pays. There's money in the next year's budget for sidewalks. That's part of your taxes. So my own feeling is that a sidewalk is a public benefit, just like the road. You're not charged for the piece of road in front of your house, are you?
Yeah.
Yes, but everybody pays, if everybody pays into that.
You can't force people to pay for something they don't have. I guess you can. You guys, like I said, have the power. You made that clear last week. I disagree with making, you can't tax a not-for-profits. You can do a fee. It's only done in one other place in the whole state. And it's ludicrous.
But I don't think we can even do a fee. I think that's only
good.
towns.
That's good. Then, you have more problem doing a tax. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Got just a general question for the audience. And I pushed for this public hearing to still happen tonight because there were still the questions about certain things that might need to be fixed. But I thought it was time that we got the public opinion after a year of talking about this and not going to the public ultimately. And Christine, I'll get to your comments. I just have a general question if I can for everybody. If we were to just stop here, go and just redline this law to take out the rate of reimbursement and to or lower me on that.
Lower you.
Lower me, believe it or not, I guess. Okay, who knew? Anyway, to take out the specs so that we can adjust them to become ADA compliant specs for folks too. To basically take out the things so we can create schedules on a more active basis and just stop there for the time being and reconsider other aspects of the code. So essentially try to get the reimbursements up, try to make sure we've got the right compliance in terms of what is being built as a sidewalk. Would anybody in this room have a problem with that code change or those code changes specifically in stopping there for now in phase one, let's say, of going down the sidewalk trail?
Explain it again.
So there's two things in the code or that are questionably in the code. The rate of reimbursement. So we're stuck on a certain rate of reimbursement until we change the code every time. And specs. That, yeah. That two things that we would like to take out of the code so that we can create schedules and say, oh, ADA changed the rules. So here's the new schedule of specs that you'll need to do. The price of sidewalks has gone up. So let's go more toward where the 50% mark would be for most people, because that's what we're legally allowed to reimburse, up to 50%. So let's increase the rate next year or go up by inflation every year. Currently, we can't do that. Currently, it's in the code. It's stuck in the code. We have to change the code every year. That costs us $375 a year to do, just to publish the code changes, if not more. If we stopped at removing those items from the code and saying, go see a schedule that the board can change from time to time by resolution, would you be okay with that idea?
Yeah.
Makes sense. It defeats the whole purpose of having a network of sidewalks that are compliant.
So you don't want people to get reimbursed the right rate?
No, I don't want to lower standards.
That's not lowering standards. That's giving money.
If your standards and specifications for your sidewalks have now been removed from the code, then anybody can put something out there and call it a sidewalk. So
No.
that's what you said.
We're creating a schedule, removing it from the code and saying, see the schedule that DPW has with the rules for specs for sidewalk that can be changed by the board by resolution from time to time. In other words, state changes their code on sidewalks. Now, to be consistent, we change our schedule to reflect the changes the state has to make sidewalks safer or ramping or whatever it may be. So we're not trying to reduce the safety. We're actually trying to make sure we keep up with the safety level required by the state and the federal government at that point.
I don't think that's going to change often enough to take it out of the code. I think.
Oh, ADA is due for a change anytime now, to be honest with you.
But I don't think they're going to change the.
I think this is a way, I'm sorry. You know what, Christine wanted to talk, sorry.
Go ahead.
Christine Fitzpatrick, 31 Chapman Street. In the words of Yogi Berra, it's deja vu all over again. It's a curse to have a good memory. This is almost the same discussion that we had 2 years ago. To answer your question about taking certain things out right now and just dealing with the ADA compliance specifications and the reimbursement, the reason I would not support that is because it doesn't solve the problem. We have to solve the problem. And it's been 2 years here that we've talked about this and we're still not solving the problem. What I'm hearing is that Pete and Mr. Jersiak and Mary Price Bush, I don't know if I said your name, I'm sorry, and a number of other people are talking about having the village take care of or pay or having this become a public good. This is the same thing that happened 2 years ago, where certain trustees who shall be remain nameless were practically crucified for presenting that as an idea. It seems to me that a lot of people are talking about the same thing, of figuring out a way for the village to take this on. And that's what I'm hearing. And I think we have to solve the problem. I don't want to fix it piecemeal. I think you have to solve the problem for real. I get there are some good things in this legislation. Sean, you're absolutely right about the gaps and if the village were to take this on, and it seems to me, I understand the problem of funding, but for me, I'm thinking, and this is very loose, if you have 2,400 households and you charge them $100 a year in increased taxes for this purpose and segregate it, you have at least $240,000 in the first year to start this and to start rebuilding this infrastructure. And in terms of the gaps, this was before we were talking all along about only filling in the gaps of existing sidewalks, not going out to Colonial Hills or Forest Forest Park and making those people fill in, build new sidewalks. I think you have to finally address those problems. And you're saying it in different words, but what I'm hearing is support for this to be a public good. Now, I just have to say, one of the reasons I moved here is because there are sidewalks, that I am a senior citizen, that I have a certified disability, that I have put in my sidewalk. I have paid for it. I paid $7,000 for it. I got the reimbursement. I'm happy to do it. And I still would support public funding of this public good. The tax, so what? It's a tax. The taxing is only bad if it's done without representation and if you don't get anything for it. But so call it a tax. If it solves the problem, it solves the problem. A couple of other things, I want to point out is in 170, the crux of the matter is always enforcement and it's always funding. How are you going to enforce this? What's the mechanism to enforce it and what's the funding? In 174-1, the process that when we're talking about a C of O from the planning board, should it not be, I think it's by the planning board, it shouldn't be, or should it be from the planning board? And I guess I would like to know what kind of a waiver, if you will, give me an example of what that might entail. The other thing is that in 174.19, you're talking about no vehicles are allowed to be ridden on sidewalks. I think I'm not sure about this, but I think that it should be checked. I think that recumbent bicycles or tricycles are considered within the realm of ADA of things that can be ridden on sidewalks. I absolutely agree. It was very instructive, Paul, what you talked about in terms of the drainage. And that was something I was unaware, and obviously that's something that has to be addressed. But fix it. 2 years later, it got sidelined before because there was this total uproar that we were going to possibly think about having, a collective quote unquote tax to pay for this. But that's what people are talking about. And one point, when you're talking, Pete, about you don't want the churches to be charged, right now, under this current law, the sidewalk in front of the church, that's their responsibility. So if you don't want them to pay, you would support a public tax for a public good. Thank you.
To the waiver. So generally, at least on my planning board in Milton, when an applicant comes before a new build, if there's something that the town government gives the planning board authority to waive, some normal requirement, the planning board could consider that. So if the village is therefore allowing the planning board to waive installing sidewalks, it's just giving authority to the planning board. And in the discovery and the discussions about their application, that's when that will come up. So that's usually, at least in our planning board, how that happens.
I don't doubt that that's the process. I'm just trying to, I'd like to know an example of where a planning board would waive that. People learn best by.
Sure, okay.
So if you had an example of when that happened, it would be instructive.
It's not sidewalk, but I can pull, we recently did give a waiver to an applicant in the town of Milton for a usual requirement that we ask. And I don't off the top of my head remember, but I can.
Green space is common. A green space
Yeah.
percentage that's in a code, often a planning board's given the authority, instead of having to take it to a zoning board for variances, to do a waiver for the green space percentage on a certain property because they need more parking or something like that, or even parking spaces.
Yeah.
Yep.
Except
So it's common.
I question why the planning board, since if you just build a house, you don't go in front of the planning board. The building inspector deals with that. So I would think that he would have some, say on, if it's a single family home being built, what planning board doesn't deal with those.
It does if there's site plan approval required. I'm not entirely sure, but what I'm saying is that it says planning board, you can put in whatever you want.
I would think planning board or building inspection, at least, I don't know if this was done for village law, but when my son built his house, he didn't go in front of the planning board.
Okay, well, I think kind of what we, at least from my perspective, I would like a planning board eyes on it because we've seen numerous new builds not put in a sidewalk, and I'd like some eyes on it so that it is a more formal request that's more public. But so at least what I was hearing from the public comment, are we still in public comment? I'll stop talking. I will stop talking. So sorry, everyone.
Can I just address what Christine said to me, or am I allowed to?
I think we're past that point, but we'll have another public comment later if you want to.
The only issue I had, Christine, was the linear footage they were gonna charge the churches. They weren't gonna charge them $100. So like the Catholic Church, their sidewalks are beautiful. Presbyterian Church is beautiful, but the Catholic Church has been charged thousands of dollars. It was based on linear footage, not $100. My biggest objection was that churches, to me, felt we were going after non-for-profits. That's how I felt. And if you look at what you proposed, it was based on linear footage.
I didn't propose.
Well, whoever proposed it before
Right.
the board did.
Let me-
And that's
Yep.
what I did.
Okay, so currently nobody in Zoom. If anybody on Zoom has a comment they want to give, please, this would be the time to do it because we will be closing for now, public comment related to this topic. Public hearing. Yes, that thing, what she said. Seeing nobody in Zoom, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the public hearing related to proposed local law number 2 sidewalk code. Closing it, or you want to reschedule this if necessary, you're saying?
Well, no, if there's going to be changes, there's going to be.
Okay, that's the question I had. At 8:53 PM, closing the public hearing. Can I get that motion?
Can I ask Carl a question? If we don't close it and continue it and make changes,
She just.
in
said
other
no, you
words,
can't
do we close this one and then have a new public hearing after changes, or do we keep this one open?
You have to have a brand new public hearing if there are substantive changes because the law is different.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Can I get that motion now? Trustee Fondainza? Trustee Raymond, discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Raymond,
Aye.
trustee Fondainza,
Aye.
trustee Cormall,
Aye.
Mayor Rossi.
Aye. Okay. Can I get a motion that the minutes of the May 8th, 2023 meeting be approved? Trustee Fondainza.
Second.
Trustee Cormos, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Mayor's announcements. First off, want to state that I had a great meeting with Eve Kenyon on Friday, and Caitlin Parwana, our chair of the Park and Tree Board. I had a good conversation with her today, and I am going to appoint Eve Kenyon to the other open position in the Park and Tree Board currently in existence. So thank you to Eve. Thank you to Caitlin for that work. Eve brings a lot of energy and experience from her residency here for many, many years. And she felt it was time to get involved, and she'll be a very, very welcome voice and source of ideas for the Park and Tree Board. So thank you to Eve. And again, thank you, Caitlin. Front Street. So I was feeling a little tired today, but then when I saw the condition of Front Street, once it got paved up to Science Street, I was like, you know something, this job ain't all bad, and it's not bad at all, but you get my point.
Fabulous. The street is fabulous.
The street is fabulous, somebody said in the audience, and I will second that. And I really do have to, again, as I stated on Facebook earlier, thanks to our DPW staff, thanks to Evolution Paving, thanks to Labella Engineering, because they had to come answer some quick fire questions on some stuff that as this developed over the last month or so. Thanks to the towns of, and I'm going to forget one, and Jeff's going to kill me for this, but Milton, Ballston, Malta, Stillwater, and Greenfield, I believe, are the 5 towns in Saratoga County that stepped up to help us at various stages of this. And without them, we couldn't get this done. But that's what our surrounding towns in Saratoga County do, why I really do love this county, and appreciate what the Board of Supervisors provides us as well. I know we're not on it, but they always listen to us and never refuse a phone call from us. So thank you again to the towns that helped us. And part 2 will be done on next Tuesday. Check your local listings, i.e. the website, Facebook, etc., just for any changes to that schedule. That's the schedule. Striping will occur on Wednesday and Thursday, but you can see the outlines for the direct parking instead of parallel parking, that we're trying to make sure that people don't park wrong. And we also worked on spacing those better and angling it better as well in this process. Thanks to DPW for thinking of that one as well. Another feature, we have reduced the timing on the traffic light on Bath Street and Front Street in the Village to about 25 seconds, because we realize that there isn't the level of traffic for a 36-second traffic light cycle. So we've done that as well. We are going to do the red painting of crosswalks next week. So you'll see the kind of brick lattice inside the asphalt that will be painted red. And we'll be outlining at least the crosswalks in white during this week when we do the normal striping. The sidewalk that National Grid kind of unearthed and then cold patched has been taken care of. Eventually that will weather into the same color. It looks a little different right now because of the oldness and newness of it, but they did a great job with that. And thanks to them for taking a phone call from Jennifer and myself a couple weeks ago, where we said, listen, we don't want to have you come in afterward and do that sidewalk and mess up our new asphalt. And they actually got on it last week. They worked on a Saturday to saw cut and came back and did the sidewalk Thursday and Friday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of last week. So thanks to Grid for that work as well. That was really appreciated, so that we could not have a disaster on our hands with the new asphalt. And also we split the work a little bit in order to give DPW some extra time to make sure some of the stuff on the west side of Front Street over to Charlton Street can be handled in the same fashion that the east side got, in terms of making sure all the drains are done fully, making sure the crosswalks are in the right spot, et cetera. So that's why we did it in 2 phases, and I'm glad we did do that as well. So again, thank you to everybody related to that Front Street project. And if I could ask you to give your thoughts that way. June 1st starts Pride Month, as always, in this country, and we are going to be participating again with respect to having a flag on our building. And that will be on June 1st. And at 3 o'clock, we are going to have a little ceremony for that we'll be announcing a little bit more details on over the next week. We also have about 100 of these, what we call the correct pride flag. Now they've updated the pride flag over the years that a lot of small businesses took from us last year with the help of BSBPA. And we're going to make sure that they have those offered again. Cindy Swatba dropped them off from Saratoga Pride, and we do appreciate her doing that, providing these always, and she'll be in attendance on June 1st with us. So we will have different things going on here. Again, we'll advise you as we do that. And Carla, I actually I'm going to give those to you because I know that is special in your family as well. So thank you very much. With respect to Carla, also, I want to correct something that was stated in this meeting a couple meetings ago about the charges from our law firm, et cetera, because I got an email today that puts in perspective. It's actually the second email in the last month or so. There was a suggestion that we're paid, by the phone call or paying by the phone call to our attorneys. That is fully untrue. We pay a $5,000 monthly retainer to her law firm. That is up from about, I think it was $3,500, but you'll understand why in a moment, why that was changed in December. 2 months ago, the month of March, about $6,700 worth of work was written off because it was over in excess of that $5,000. Basically, if we were paying full price for the services being rendered, we would have paid $11,700 for that month. This month, about $4,000 and change was written off. Again, that would have been over $9,000 of services that were rendered that we would have paid for. I just want to verbalize my personal appreciation for what Carla does in her firm. Even knowing that they're taking a little bit of a hit in that respect, they don't refuse our phone calls. They don't refuse to do the work for us. And she goes well beyond the call of duty. As I said, she believes in the Village of Ballston Spa as our attorney and wants to see us move forward. And I hate everything that has been done to undercut her at certain points in time. And I just want to thank her one more time publicly for what she does. Liaison reports, let's start with Liz.
Yes, liaison reports. Since Ben isn't here on the Park and Tree Board, related to that, the Friends of Wiswall are having a work day, June 2nd and 3rd. Show up at 9:30 with your work clothes and some tools. We'll be putting some mulch down and some flowers and trying to make it look a little bit better on Wiswall Park. On the library, the auction, as many know, was very successful. They raised, I think, I was trying to look for the number, $12,000 in that. They're moving forward, working on the grants, and keep your fingers crossed that they get the Gillibrand grant, because that would give them $300,000, and then they could do phase one. Also in the library, as you might know, there's the garden club provides a garden sort of bag for children to take that have books and activities and et cetera. And now the Audubon Society has provided a similar type of a bird bag for children to learn about birds. So those are two community driven things that are provided to children. The only other thing is, we talked about the ADA grant process. There will be training. It won't be a regular meeting for the people in the ADA committee that signed up and other people that signed up to actually do the inventory. We'll be getting training on June 1st on how to use we'll be using our iPhones to put the data in, and it'll go automatically in so that the consultant can do the analysis. I think that's about it.
Thank you. Trustee Bernadette.
Well, in the interest of brevity, I'll just kind of stick to the SBPA. one thing I did want to reiterate, and I had the chance to email Jeff, but the business community is tremendously thankful for how the Front Street paving has gone along. I was at the BSBPA meeting, and they remarked that there was so little interruption, and I'm just really glad to hear that our village could do that and make our Front Street that much more beautiful, but also not harm our small businesses, because that's a big project. So a lot of credit goes to the DPW, Jeff, a lot of his work of planning ahead, and mayor. So thank you for that. Upcoming is first Friday, June 2nd, I believe. There is going to be the first summer movie. I don't remember what it is. I'm sorry. Strange World. I've never heard of it. So someone said, is it about the village? All right, enough smart comments. But so the first Friday, they're doing a lot of efforts to try to bring more people into the village, or even just our residents, bring people downtown, make sure that they enjoy the shops and dining experiences. The one other thing, we'll have another meeting before the start of it, but the farmers market is going to be starting June 10th. So a lot of good things, at least coming from our business community, and really tremendously happy that the paving went really well for them. So thanks.
Trustee Raymond.
Well, I'd like to talk about Front Street, but I mean, geez, everybody's talked about it already. But I will talk about it again. I just want to commend DPW staff for doing an excellent job. And, it was more than just paving. There was a lot of curb ramps, make ADA compliant. There was a lot of concrete work, and they've done a great job. I feel very thankful that we have such a good crew, the DPW.
Amen.
Now that that's mostly over, all those things that have been put on hold, well, now they're going to have an opportunity to get to. As far as rubbish, leaf, grass removal, stuff like that, yeah, I know. I've known my own streets that's sitting there for weeks. I would say probably this weekend, though, if you have any yard work left, get it done this weekend, because I imagine it'll be out for full force next week, cleaning all that up. But other than that, I think they're just taking a breath right now.
Jeff put in for a couple of days off, and I'm like, yeah, like I'm going to say no after all this. Okay. Treasurer's report, I'll just state quickly here that tax bills are being mailed out over this week. So be prepared for your tax bill. If you did not pay your water or sewer, re-levy will be included inside that tax bill, and it is itemized in that respect. There is a motion to extend the hours of Melissa McCann, who is our deputy treasurer, but part-time, into a full-time status for the time being until we locate a permanent treasurer. She was willing to do so, does not need the health benefits, she stated. But when we pass this, we will pass it as a full-time position temporarily. And she'll get the PTO, et cetera, related to that situation, because it would be full-time for that period. So that's what that is about, coming up in the motions. Don Traver continues to assist too in the office, as you saw probably from the motion at the last meeting. He's helping out with the tax bills, and he's going to work with me also to get our retroactive pay for the police moving forward as well. We're working with them to get their estimates of what they're owed right now from the retroactive pay, and then we will confirm it with our ADP sources, because we split into two different ADP functions over the last year. It's a little bit more convoluted than you would think, but we will be able to get the data we need to confirm their payments and make them whole as well. That's what I've got. We did have an interview last week. Unfortunately, the person had to pass due to family issues. They did not want to leave their current position, and so we continue our search in Saratoga County, and only Saratoga County, while we're being covered right now well by Melissa and Don, and with Tricia assisting as well with her functions, and Bob obviously with the tax bills too. So we've got a good team working right now, trying to get things moving forward. And I'm going to be talking further with Bob Fox and Tina Denigro now that we know what we have in front of us, because we did not get the acceptance of that treasurer position. We'll be talking with them about what the next steps are with them and where to go with respect to the board's desires in that respect as well. That cover the question you were about to ask over there?
Yeah, well, I wanted to know what the status was.
Yeah.
And then we'd also discuss, you know, that whether, if this goes on, whether we might need to, you know, do an accounting firm or a temporary firm, hire a, you know, essentially a temporary treasurer. You know, I don't know what the capabilities of our deputy treasurer are, is it, you know.
She's very adept. I gotta be honest with you. I've been impressed with her. She wanted to take on more work to help out, and we appreciate that fact. I think it's always a good sign, to say the least, when somebody says, hey, I'm willing to go and put in the extra hours by all means. So let's take her up on that. We'll hopefully pass that motion later and keep assessing on an ongoing basis as we determine if we have other applicants out there for treasurer that come up too.
Are we going to be getting regular, you know, monthly reports?
Those who can be made up by EFPR and passed over to Melissa, and then she'd probably actually print those herself as she becomes taught by the Melissa at EFPR how to do that as well on a monthly basis.
We haven't got them.
You got the March one, did you not?
Yeah.
Yep. So on Barbara's last day, I know she sent that out. Okay. Old business and new business blank. We kind of beat the sidewalk horse earlier, so that's not going to be discussed there at this point. Public comment for just in general, 5 minutes for anybody that wants to speak. And I see Gina Morosi.
There I go again.
And let me just remind everybody, name, address, please be respectful, address the board, and have at it from there because it is your 5 minutes. Go.
Gina Morosi, 10 Old Glory Lane. 3 things. Number 1, I was at the meeting when Carla's fees were misrepresented to the public, and I think she's owed an apology, Liz. You misrepresented how she charges the village.
You were just instructed to address the board.
All right, board, I think Liz owes Carla an apology for misrepresenting her fees. Board. Number 2, you've got an item on the agenda for yoga every Sunday in June, July, August in the park. I think we have a slight conflict, and I'd be happy to, or Mark would be happy to reach out. We've got 2 Sundays where we've got major events in the village. June 11th and August 20th. So would you, in voting on that, how would you like to handle that?
We will have to figure that out when we get to it, I guess.
Okay, thanks for that answer.
Yep, no problem. I'm just one man.
And lastly, I just would like to remind the board that you really should refrain from using your cell phones during the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? I see Ray Otten's hand. I see Ray Otten coming up to speak. I see 16 middle what?
Middle hour. No, midnight hour. No. Ray Otten, 16 Middlebrook Avenue. Couple questions. First question is the CDTA, there was supposed to be doing some kind of a study about the bus stops in the village, and I'm just curious where we are with those, and if they are still considering keeping the the one that plugs up everybody in the village at Malta Avenue. I am probably, because I'm retired and bored and I got nothing else to do, going to be sitting down at the Malta Avenue intersection, not in the intersection, but in front of the laundromat at that bus stop, although I may get pushed in, who knows? Because I'm going to talk to the people that actually use the bus stop and see if it would be a very big imposition on them to walk the extra 500 feet down to the existing bus stop where they could actually do a bump out that you've talked about, Sean, and maybe lose a couple of parking spots there rather than taking parking spots out of the main business district, which has never made sense to me. And if we survey the businesses there, I think they would probably agree. I may go down and talk to them and do a little bit of a straw poll and see, hey, can you walk that extra 500 feet downhill? Or not come down the hill and get the bus up at the corner of Church and 67. There's existing bus stops within 500 feet either way. So I'd still like to hear what CDTA is coming up with. And on that same topic, what business does the CDTA bring into this village? Any? Do they support us in any way? Do they pay for those bus stops? Are they just anywhere they want to put a bus stop, they can? Or I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. I'd like to find out what that looks like. What commerce they bring into the village. Secondly, the whole ADA thing. I did solicit the village office to find out, because I was very encouraged by the reaction that the fire chief got. As I said before, during sidewalks, I go around this village a lot on my scooter because that's how I get around. And so I asked, how do you go about filing a complaint about a sidewalk that jars your teeth out or doesn't, or has a, I know you mentioned, Bernadette, a 2 or 3 inch drop. There's drops of a foot and more. There's places in this village where I have to go out on the street to go and get around an area where I can't take a scooter through. A wheelchair, forget about it. You'd never get through. So I got the form. So I guess I'm going to be the guy that that goes around and says, hey, you need to fix your sidewalk. I will be more than happy to be that guy because I want to be able to walk around this village or motor around this village. And I do have a legally allowed motor vehicle in my possession. So it's one of those things where it needs to be done. And I just want to let everybody know that, hey, it's going to be this guy. You know where I live. Thank you.
Can I get a motion making Ray Otten the sidewalk henchman of the Village of Ballston Spa a new position?
Talk to Millie first.
Yeah. Okay, who else has a comment in the house? Seeing none, Lisa is coming up next, and I owe her some answers. And so we'll bring Lisa on. Lisa, how are you?
Hey, I'm waiting for answers. So before I ask my questions.
Go. Okay. So
go ahead and give the answers.
I'm going to give you the quick answers. Ready? DPW schedule for yard waste, I think you heard earlier, is forthcoming as we're finishing up this project. Fire whistle, I believe it is still a parts issue going on from what I understand. It is activating for actual emergencies, but we are still waiting for it to be routine on the noon and 6 o'clock whistles that are going out. Cleanup day, you mentioned trash cans in what you read last week. We did have trash can placement out throughout the community. I'm assuming that one was included where you were pointing out it may have been missing. They were a little late getting them out because, again, Front Street was taking up kind of their focus, but we got those out and the pedestrian signs out as well. Who's responsible for making sure the new Arbor Day trees taken care of? Park and Tree is overseeing that. Speeding on village streets. Patrols are being stepped up generally. We're working on that with Chief Bush to make sure of that. The insurance question, I've got to actually get you more data on that one, so I'm going to pass on that. You had questions on 2 items from last week. I think you got your answers generally in those. too many committees, stop the insanity. We appreciate that. Sidewalk code, you think you heard a lot of answers to that tonight. Maybe not everything you want to know, but at least you heard that we're working on it and taking seriously public comment on that. And the American flag question, I made sure Jeff has subscribed to that service that tells you when to fly the flag at half staff. I meant to give it to Jennifer as well, because having both of them have that information, they'll make sure that it happens at the correct timing. And I apologize that we didn't get the last one. It was a different Memorial Day last week, I think it was, and that's what actually spurred me to give it over to Jeff to make sure we get our flags flying at the proper level in those situations. Hope that at least gives you most of the information you're looking for.
Okay, so with that being said, it's great that Front Street is done and everything else, and that the businesses are happy with how that happened and everything. But because the businesses are happy and it was not like such an interruption to them, it was an interruption to the residents. I know last Monday that nobody knew about it that came into work. A lot of people were late to work. This Monday was better because we kind of were a little bit on top of it, but that was kind of thrown at people, especially people that don't, subscribe to your Facebook page. And with that being said, my leaves have been out for in excess of at least a month and a half, and nobody's picked them up. And now you're saying it's going to be yet another week over a holiday weekend where, I want my yard to look nice, but now it's not going to look nice because there's yard waste that I took care of in a timely manner, but the village didn't. And that's what we pay taxes for. We're residents. We're not just people coming in to visit. We're not businesses that are only here during certain hours of the day that go home to other places where their homes look nice. And I'm not saying that every business isn't a resident, but that's, that's kind of how I feel on that. There still isn't a trash can. I drove by tonight. There's no trash can over there on our end of the trail. So, people are throwing trash wherever. I don't have a list tonight. Oh, the fire whistle. I would like specifics of when this went out. How much is this costing the village? And what is the expectation of getting that back? It might not seem important to people, but when I'm outside working, I like to know what time it is for noon. I know what time it is for 6 o'clock, and that's been that way my entire life. So, you can hear that whistle in the town of Ballston as well. But, and I'm going to play Ray Otten here for a second. And that earthquake class that, he used that example to take that emergency class that people should be for emergency preparedness. Is that open to the general public or not? Because there's stuff going on in this world. We are on a fault line. They're talking about all these windmills and stuff affecting the whales and, killing whales off. And that's energy in the ground that's shaking things. So it's a possibility that could happen here. Is that open to the public? That's all. Thank you.
Carl is actively checking for that last one. Gray had put it out in the back, FEMA website for at least the information if she can't find it in the time that we have left here. So we'll try to get you that information. I think anyone can take it is what somebody else is saying. I think they're right, but I know you have to sign up or register on the site to have access to the different things as well, different videos and tests if you wanted to take the exam that goes with it. And yes, Ray, I've looked into it and I just have to schedule myself the hours to do it. Say 100, 200, and 700 are the sections that we should be taking. Okay, and Lisa, if you're all good, we will ask anybody left in the house if they have any further public comments, he said. Seeing none, let's go to motions. Oh, I'm sorry, let's go to, I do it every time, Liz.
Yep.
Board comments, questions, concerns.
I'd like to address Ray's comments. Actually, today I got an email from CDTA, Megan, asking us, to whether to do a stakeholder presentation. And I had replied to her that she wanted to do a presentation at a board meeting, which, would be limited time and get feedback, or schedule a special meeting, and I haven't heard from her yet. CDTA hired and is paying the full cost of CHA to do the assessment, to do the traffic analysis. And they have come up with some alternatives, including doing it at Malta, but other alternatives. And that's what they'll discuss at a presentation. As far as, so it's coming, maybe if they want to do it during a village meeting, it might be the next meeting to present these alternatives and get public feedback. Whatever, results from this effort, they will pay 100% of. There is no cost to the village whatsoever. And I have, I don't know what the law is, but they are a state agency and they probably can do whatever they want, but they seem to be willing to, listen to public feedback on this. As far as what they contribute, I mean, to have the bus line go through and stop at this village, I think has a major impact on the economy. If not so much for customers, but for workers. People can get here to work here. So I think, we know that we have a large percentage of low and moderate income individuals, and a very high percentage of people who do not drive either, for economic reasons or for disability, a lot of seniors, et cetera. And they depend on this bus system. And the reason they're here is because we do have a bus and, we have the social services. So I think the fact that CDTA has a bus route going up Route 50, stopping here is important to our economy.
I have no doubt that's true, but the one thing that bothered me when I spoke with Megan originally, when this was starting up, was that she was giving very short shrift to the idea that the placement of the bus stops may be creating traffic issues because the buses would have to stop, lower, discharge. Sometimes bikes were involved in the front of the bus, so whether they were being taken on or off the front of the bus, then raised again. And that's just a function of the bus. We get that. And we don't have cutouts or the ability to make cutouts where it's located currently. And there was short shrift being given to the idea that this is a real issue and that it has to be evaluated. Not to say that they can change anything, but that it has to be looked at. And I'm glad to hear that it's being considered in some format or at least looked at. And I would ask everybody that is involved with that committee to keep them on that track because it does need to be reviewed. This has been one of the single most problematic situations, I think, with Route 50 traffic. We had to look at this back in the old days of the property we developed years ago. And we saw this happening and CDTA didn't want to step up to do anything at that point. And I think this is a pass the buck moment. If something can be done, I hope it's done so that it doesn't put people out by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, make sure that traffic flows in a way that it needs to flow in that street. It just has to flow there. It's a state highway.
Right. They are listening and, I provided feedback to them and they are looking at alternative sites. And, they want to hear from the public about these alternatives. And I don't know if using the other existing sites 500 feet is a good long distance for somebody to, particularly the one uphill, that's a trek. But there's the one to the south, but that, we'll let
Stay
them.
involved, I guess is the point.
We'll let them address that.
I appreciate what Ray's feedback has been along the way because he's reignited. I wasn't the only one that realized this. Is what I got to know from this, and I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
I don't take the bus. It doesn't affect me other than driving through the village,
Right.
which again, I go all the time in the world. But my concern is for the emergency vehicles and things like that, that's just a horror story there. It's a horror story.
They didn't even attempt to pull off at all.
Well, one of the things we're experiencing is that there are some folks that want to close off Washington for special events. And the thing that distinguishes Washington from Front Street, let's say, and Bath Street is that there is no real alternative access if you were to cut off Washington for fire trucks to get to Malta easily for mutual aid purposes or just in general down Malta Avenue. So if we ever were to close Washington, we'd have to make sure that we created at least half the street still for the fire truck bypass in those situations. But that street is wrought with different problems, and Chloe Crow, I know, is on your committee and is, very vocal about the need to assess those problems on that street that are being created in various ways. The buses are helping create some of that as well. And so again, I hope that we can find resolutions to make that situation better for everybody involved, because public safety may be influenced by it. Sean.
I just add with, when we did meet with CDTA, one thing to keep in mind, he said the average stop at the particular locations in Route 50 is 23 seconds. 23 seconds. So I know, well, I'm also the EIC for Region 1 traffic, and believe me, I get calls all day long. I sat 2 minutes, 3 minutes at a light. The whole entire cycle length of the signal is no more than 100 seconds. So people's perception and what actually is can be very different.
23 seconds, really? That sounds more like EIEIO than EIC. I got to be honest with you. Where did that? Nothing there. I've got nothing. Let's go to motions. Got to get a motion that Union Fire Company number 2 be granted permission to utilize the Union Firehouse on Sunday, June 18th, 2023 for a seminar. Trustee Fondainza. Trustee Cormos, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion that Malta Avenue Elementary School be granted permission to close Grove Street from 11 a.m. until 12:15 p.m. on June 16th for their annual egg drop? Trustee Fondainza. Trustee Cormos, discussion.
What's an egg roll? You never done one?
Just kind of.
Oh, it's engineering, you have to, sorry, I got excited. Oh, well.
Will it break, basically?
Just real quick, it's an opportunity for children to test out engineering and how to build a protective structure around the egg, and you drop it from a certain height, and if it cracks, you didn't do so well, and if it's protected, you understood. It's really cute. Sorry, excited about that for a moment.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion that Saha Yoga be granted permission to conduct yoga in the park in Iron Spring Park each Sunday in June, July, and August from 10:45 a.m. to 12:15 p.m., including setup and takedown time. Proof of insurance has been provided. The clerk is it's the best way to say this. Okay. Yeah, well, except this is not to be approved for Sunday, June 11th or Sunday, August 20th, 2023, due to counter programming in the park.
How about conflicting events?
Conflicting events? Due to conflicting events in the park. Gosh.
I will make the motion.
Trustee Fondainza.
Second.
Trustee Raymond, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion that deputy treasurer position temporarily become a full-time role up to 32 hours per week until July 1st, 2023, which may be renewed by future motion if necessary. The position will continue to be paid on an hourly wage basis at the current rate.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Trustee Cormos and Trustee Fondainza, discussion.
Any benefits being provided or not?
PTO, if she opted into healthcare, she would, but it sounds like she'll be opting out for that. And Terry, help me out. Anything else?
No.
Thank you.
Just want to verify.
That was just a great pause there that had me wondering.
I had to come back to earth for a minute.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For full-time person?
Opposed? Motion carries. Christine, what were you asking? I'm not trying to be rude.
For a full-time person, there's also disability.
And retirement, workers' comp.
She's eligible for the month that she'll be in that full time. She'll get the credit for that. Yes. Can I get a motion that the following individuals be appointed to the Revenue Advisory Committee? Hold on. Laura Ryan, Alex Funicello, Mary Price Bush. I have Peter Martin, Paul Farnan,
Kevin Dillon.
Kevin Dillon. Thank you. I could not think for the life of me.
And Ben?
Can't. Yeah.
Well, then I think we should table.
Can I get the motion? Trustee Fondainza, I'll second it. Okay, now let's go to discussion regarding it.
Yeah, I mean, if they're Ben's picks, Ben should be here. So,
Well, it's Ben's pick, but we can't unfortunately say his name rightfully right now because he has not cleared with his employer that he can do this, or at least that hasn't told us. That's the issue. It's Ben's pick. We're not saying Ben can't have this pick. It's just a question of we can't name this person right now.
well, will he clarify this in 2 weeks?
I would hope so. We've been asking for 5 days already,
So
and I
then-
couldn't get an answer.
Let's table it, and then if you don't, then we can vote on it. What's that?
You have 3 weeks? Yeah. So
3 weeks.
So
Okay,
5 Monday
then it's 3 weeks.
I have a question though.
Go ahead.
If we know, we're just pending on, I guess I don't see, we're just waiting on him. All of us know. Can we say, I don't know, is there a way around that? Because we all know who it is. You can't, I don't know. I'm just asking, just to move us forward.
A compromise. You appoint these folks to it. Don't hold a meeting until Ben's pick is appointed. I don't see, I mean, you know who everybody else is. It's just like appointing anybody to the Park and Tree Board. You know a bunch of people, you just don't know another person coming.
Well,
Just a thought.
I didn't put this on the agenda, although that's my name. The reason I didn't was because Ben had confirmed and the mayor made an issue of he hadn't confirmed that he can serve.
It's not the mayor making an issue. This is unfortunately an issue.
Well, it is an issue, but you brought it up, so I did not put it on the agenda, but it landed on there without my action. And I also have, if I knew that this was going, we were going to vote on this, I have a committee charter, which, should be reviewed, which, states the duties of this group and also states that the Revenue Advisory Committee will have full and complete access to otherwise public, financial, and other records of the village as they may be requested. They also may meet with department heads and other village staff as deemed appropriate by the majority.
This is in the motion though. We got a
No, I
motion.
know
We got a
it's not
motion
a
for
motion,
membership
but
right now.
This is part of the revenue, I believe should be part of it. And the fact is that I requested information last August on the water billing, which is necessary for this analysis, that I have yet to receive. And I think that is,
And have you talked to Bob?
I've talked to Bob multiple times and have been told that he either can't do it or, he went on vacation, and I still haven't gotten the data. So if this is all depending on me completing an analysis, I don't have the data. And
Okay,
I asked for it last
But
August.
can I stop you for a second? We're talking about a revenue advisory committee that you're not going to be on.
No, but I'm gonna present on the water billing issue. That was the whole purpose of having this committee. You suggested we reinvigorate the Revenue Advisory Committee to look at the suggestion. I can go straight to a presentation in front of this board and skip them. I thought it was a good idea to have them review it. I had no problem with that, but I still haven't gotten the data.
So
And I
just,
think they should be able to get whatever they need.
Recognizing Brenda.
so I see there's two different issues here. The Revenue Advisory Committee can look not just at your recommendation, but develop their own recommendations of their own. And that is not the sole charge, in my opinion, to address and review just your ideas. So I don't see them as, yes, you should get the data. I don't think anybody is saying that you shouldn't get the data. But to make such a big a point of that, it's the revenue, I can't even say that right now. The Revenue Advisory Committee is not you. It is not your only tool. It is for the entire benefit of this entire village. So
I can't get the data as a trustee, then are they going to get the data? if they-
of course,
Perhaps they should meet to determine the data they feel is relevant to the questions being presented and let us know what that data is so that we can see what we can and can't produce. If Bob's saying he can't produce something
No,
for
he
you,
can produce it, he just doesn't have the time or isn't producing it. I don't know why. It was data that I received a few years ago with waiting a couple of weeks to get it from Julia. And maybe it's the lack of the trust, having the treasurer, or somebody who knows how to pull the data.
Treasurer barely touched the water data in its entirety. That was not the
Well,
treasurer's
she
role.
was able to get me the information. Julia was able to produce it. It's interesting. Some of it, I sat by her desk and she produced a report. Like, it was like this.
I think a lot of the names that were mentioned to be appointed to this committee are smart enough and have, the ability to discern what kind of information that they need. And, with follow up, and yes, I mean, we should be able to produce data. I think we'll be fine in that regard. I mean, we have Mr. Dillon, we have Mr. Martin Law, right? You're on that as well. People that are familiar, with the process. And I'm eager to have Mary's input and from a viewpoint of as a resident and taxpayer. So I think that I forgot my point, but I feel like we're going in circles sometimes on these conversations. At the end of the day, I think this advisory committee is not there just to look at one viewpoint, one particular proposal. It's for them to come together and look at some other things that we're not thinking of. So yes, get the data. It's not dependent on your particular getting the data just for your one idea.
I didn't say that. The charter actually says.
You were kind of going down that point.
In order to assist the village board of trustees in developing strategies and identifying opportunities to increase revenues in the village. It does not specifically say, but it was suggested to reform this committee to review the analysis that I have done in the past.
Doesn't mean that they cannot meet before you propose your idea, though.
So to step in here, what happened here is she was reading from a charter, then started a commentary aside from the charter that you're responding to. Having said that, the motion in front of us is for those names that were mentioned to be included in the Revenue Advisory Committee. I will offer an amendment based on council's recommendation here to state in addition that the Revenue Advisory Committee shall not meet until Trustee Baskin's appointment is ratified by this board. Would you accept that as an amendment? I will accept it as the second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
I think it should be, we should wait till Ben's back.
Okay, I'm going to suggest the vote was 3-1, so it is ayes having it, and the ayes do have it, the motion carries. I get a motion that DPW Working Supervisor Scott Kearns be allowed to cash out his unused vacation time of 64.75 hours and his unused personal time of 40 hours that he was unable to use during or due to the Front Street paving project. Trustee Fondainza. I will second it. Discussion. Any reason why nobody seconded?
I'd like to understand why the Front Street paving project would,
Fiscal year.
because it's the end of the fiscal year and he hadn't used it, but we knew about the Front
No.
Street paving project a number of months ago.
Okay, Liz, at what point were you going to be able to commit to your time in that situation with the weather unknowns and everything else? That's completely unfair.
Well, I just want to understand, this is not like something that happened, unexpected, that there's a lot of hours here that weren't used, It seems to me.
Are you concerned about running over the PS budget? Because I can answer that.
That's my question.
Mechanic was vacant for a decent period of time, which Steve Brooks had filled in at just an incremental amount of extra money. Also, John Greer is no longer with the village, so his status is empty in that position. So we're not paying out on that role and won't until we rehire. So there is plenty of excess budget that was left over from this year in that respect.
Okay.
I just think, is this setting a precedent for doing this at the end of the year? If there's a project?
Well, I think the question ultimately becomes perhaps doing a stagger move. Bob raised this to me today, and a stagger move based on their vacation calendar, maybe based on anniversary date or something like that. But that's an entire union contract change at that point that we can't just do right now sua sponte. So that's something considered down the line.
Second, the next two are comp times to compensate them for not taking their vacation at the end of the year. But for the first one, for Scott, it's cashing out. Why the difference?
They were offered the different ideas as to just punting it so that they could use it at a later date, going into the next fiscal year, et cetera. So it's that this was their choice on how they wanted to handle it in each case.
Is this in the contract that this happens?
It is not in the contract specifically. That's why we're approving it. But at the same time, Scott, as the union rep, has discussed this with their union folks to make sure that they were okay with this. Under the circumstances of what was needed for Front Street, it was approved that this concept could occur. And I think you would have a real problem ultimately if you didn't approve this with the union and what happens next on the union negotiations, to be honest with you. Just my thought.
It just seems a bit unusual, and I just didn't know if this is normally what's done. Because are there going to be other staff members who say, oh, I had to work on this project, I couldn't use my vacation?
Oh, these happen on occasion, yes. They do happen on occasion where impossibility situation comes up, or we have to basically ask them because of staffing issues, whatnot. This does happen historically. We aren't just creating this process. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion that DPW employees Steve Brooks with 23.25 hours, Michael Morrissey with 33.25 hours, and Ryan West with 5 hours be allowed to convert their unused vacation time to comp time that will carry over to the next fiscal year as a result of the time not being used because of the Front Street paving project? Trustee Fandesa.
Second.
Trustee Raymond, discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, okay. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Can I get a motion that DPW crew leader Glenn Bowers and DPW employees Steve Brooks, Michael Morrissey, Tyler Sherman, and Ryan West be allowed to carry over 40 hours, and DPW Superintendent Jeff Gowries be allowed to carry over 36.25 hours of unused vacation time into next year as a result of vacation time not being used due to the Front Street paving project?
Sorry.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, I'll make that motion.
I will second it.
Trustee Raymond. Discussion.
All this carried over vacation time, how's that going to affect the ability for DPW to do their work if everybody's out on vacation?
They're not going to guaranteed use it simultaneously. It's going to give them the luxury to spread it out throughout the next year. They're not all looking to leave on June 1st.
Well,
Jeff may be, but
there's a lot of hours here. And
Yeah, it happens quite often. Even at the state, folks will have hundreds of hours at the end of their career, and they basically retire early. So.
But we don't allow them to carry this to the end of their career.
well, no, there's a limit to what they can carry over, and then they're put in this forced play where they have to use it or lose it. So a lot of these folks have built up the bank or are trying not to, hit that hard level on their bank of hours at this point. So
this is basically an exception to that rule that they use it or lose it.
I'll let her have that. My only comment in our discussion is I'm extremely thankful for what the DPW did for this. And I think that we should be not dickering over this. So that's my only comment. Thanks.
All in favor? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I will be skipped. Other business? Well, unfortunately, I think everybody's clear that that's not going to be appropriate for. Carla will be given further direction via email over the next week. How's that for sidewalk? Yep.
Sure, we don't need another special meeting?
We can.
There's a lot of work to do, a lot of work. And we need something in there about the spans. I will not be voting on anything that doesn't address that.
We have a 3-week stretch between our next meeting, so we could put in a.
There's gonna be nothing done in that sidewalks.
Can I get a motion to adjourn and that vouchers be audited and meeting be adjourned at 9:49 PM? Trustee Fondanza. Second. Trustee Raymond, discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Good night, folks.
Sorry, John. I was just a bad bet. Sorry. I had hope. Totally let me down. You hope wrong. Yes.